A young woman in a white jacket cheerfully calls out that she'll be back later as she ties her shoes to leave. Ah! She's suddenly startled and falls backward, surprised by someone grabbing at her. A gaunt young man peeks out from a doorway, asking Kim Hansel what time she'll be home today. Ah! Annoyed, Kim Hansel tells him she'll be out late with a friend and asks why. He cheekily asks her to buy popsicles on her way back, using his upcoming military service as an excuse, which makes Kim Hansel angrily question his sanity. Arg! Furious, Kim Hansel demands money if he's going to boss her around, accusing him of only learning how to drink at university. Muttering about how childish he is, Kim Hansel finally storms out the door. Shake, shake, she yells back, a final reminder that she'll be home late, questioning his memory. On a quiet subway platform after rush hour, Kim Hansel finds her heart is finally at peace. Loud shouting breaks her peace as a man in a red vest argues with a subway staff member, refusing to pay for his short ride while questioning why an older man rides for free. The staff member explains he is a volunteer. The man in the red vest insists he has no money, but the staff member holds firm, asking who would pay if they let everyone on for free. Deciding it's not her business, Kim Hansel resolves to ignore the shouting, thinking the problem will be gone once she boards the train. As the next train's arrival is announced, Kim Hansel muses on the morning's strange events, just as a hand reaches for her shoulder. "Ack!" she cries out as the man in the red vest violently pulls her back from the tracks, yelling at her. He aggressively grabs her collar, demanding to know if she thinks he's weird too, while she clenches his hand in defense. He rants about being fined for a 2-station ride, confirming Kim Hansel's belief that he has gone crazy. He begins to choke Kim Hansel, who struggles against his surprisingly strong grip, while the staff member begs him to stop. He suddenly releases his grip, and Kim Hansel thinks with relief that her day won't be ruined. A whir and rattle signal the train's departure as Kim Hansel watches it pull away. Her face darkens with anger as she mutters an incensed, "Excuse me." She finally explodes, demanding to know why he's taking his frustration about the fine out on her. A yelling match erupts as she calls him crazy, and he claims he's old enough to be her mother, to which Kim Hansel furiously retorts that her mother isn't an embarrassment like him. A sudden, violent push sends someone reeling. Panting, the men look on in absolute shock as a scream echoes through the station. From the ground, Kim Hansel wonders why everyone is looking down at her as they frantically ask if an ambulance has been called. She sees the attacker being restrained and thinks that the lady getting arrested serves her right. Lying on the platform, Kim Hansel feels her strength fading, but knows she has to get up and go to school. Her mind fills with promises she made, to her friend, to her brother, as she lies injured and fading. Trembling, she thinks of all the things she still needs to do for her family as her hand lies limp next to her phone. As the station rushes into a blur, she feels her eyes closing against her will. Her vision goes completely white as a large vehicle rushes towards her. Whoosh! Her consciousness is transported to a mystical forest, the land of mystery known as Atito. A brilliant flash of light erupts from the heart of the forest. The very ground begins to rumble with a growing, magical energy. Roar! The golden dragon Kurisoth emerges in a display of magnificent power. Kurisoth announces a prophecy. A distinct soul is destined to appear in the Drafarkuth kingdom. He clarifies that this soul is not evil, but is in fact aligned with them. An unseen presence appears, asking if us refers to all spirits. Sparkle, a beautiful blonde spirit appears, explaining that it encompasses the 6 spirits of elements, light and darkness, a combination no human has ever mastered. Kurisoth gravely confirms that the prophesied soul has already arrived in Drafarkuth. Roar! Kurisoth bellows a blessing for this new soul, proclaiming it will be their cherished companion. The blonde spirit cheers, her face lit with a joyous smile. Whoosh! The divine scene fades back into the quiet of the forest. A woman in a white dress stands before a mysterious hooded figure in the sun-dappled forest. The hooded figure raises a hand, initiating a magical act. A simple branch begins to glow with an ethereal light. The glowing branch floats down into the waiting hands of the woman. She gazes at the branch in her hands, utterly captivated by its magic. The scene shifts to a grand mansion under a starry night sky. A blond man watches over the sleeping woman, reflecting on his glorious dream of a dense forest that reminded him of Atito. The blond man recounts his dream of a cloaked figure and a golden branch, which the woman agrees must have been magnificent. Inspired, she smiles and decides she wants to give their child a name based on his dream. Cradling a pine branch, she decides on the name Fina. Her husband smiles warmly, agreeing that Fina is a beautiful and strong name. Now holding their newborn, the new parents tell baby Fina how they worried when she was so still in the womb. Kiss. The mother tenderly kisses Fina's head, expressing her relief that the baby is healthy. The mother lovingly gazes at her peacefully sleeping baby, calling her our lovely Fina. Chirp, chirp, outside the grand mansion, 2 attendants clip the trees on a sunny day. Tremble, tremble. A child's small legs shake nervously as they stand on something high up. A young boy wakes from his sleep with an excited, "Wow!" Sparkle, the boy, introduced as Marquise Makira's eldest son, Felix Makira, marvels at how small the baby in the crib is. His mother finds Felix by the crib and gently chides him for running over in his pajamas before washing his face. Felix excitedly declares how pretty and cute his new baby sister is, making his mother chuckle. She kneels down, calling Felix an admirable brother but cheekily reminding him to wash his face. She asks a nearby nanny for confirmation, who agrees, "That's right, madam." While his face is being wiped clean, Felix eagerly asks his mother if he can hold the baby. His mother smiles warmly and invites him to hold the baby with her. Felix lets out an amazed, "Wow!" as he sits on his mother's lap, helping to hold his tiny sister. He leans in close, still in awe of how small the baby is. The mother notes that Fina looks like her, while Felix looks just like his father, Caleb. Rub, rub. Felix gently caresses Fina's cheek, asking if she's asleep, a narrator noting his adorable, caring nature at only 3. Her smile fading to concern, the mother wonders if Fina is actually sleeping properly. Her anxiety grows as she realizes Fina is breathing, but has been sleeping for over 2 weeks straight. She recalls that Fina barely moved in the womb and hasn't even opened her eyes since birth. Fina remains peaceful, having only whined quietly since birth, making her mother wish she would cry more loudly. Holding her 2 children, the mother's face is filled with worry for her unusually quiet newborn. Dazed, Kim Hansel's consciousness stirs, and her first thought is that she needs to get up. Lying in a void, she wonders what on earth could have happened to her. Her memory returns of waiting for the subway to attend her university's welcoming ceremony. She then remembers the argument with the person she calls a crazy lady who violently pushed her. She recalls people staring down, the feeling of blood on her head, and the horrifying realization that she's in this state because of the attack. Flail, flail, Kim Hansel thrashes in a fit of rage, cursing her luck and vowing to sue her attacker without settling. Pose, she strikes a defiant pose, threatening to crack the woman's skull open and boasting about her badminton skills. The defiant silence hangs in the air for a moment. Droop, her anger subsides into a sigh as she questions if this is a hospital, feeling strangely numb. Feeling as if she's floating in space, she wonders if it's the after effects of anesthesia. R.I. She grabs her head, screaming in frustration over having to suffer because of her attacker. A gentle hand strokes her hair, startling her out of her anger. Looking up, she joyfully recognizes the person, exclaiming, "It's Mom!" She closes her eyes in relief, thinking her mom must be worried and mentally reassuring her that she's okay. Believing she heard her mother laugh, she smiles contentedly. The scene returns to the peacefully sleeping baby Fina, who is now smiling sweetly in her sleep. Kim Hansel's consciousness again recognizes the comforting presence, thinking, "It's Mom!" Feeling her mother's worry, she again sends a mental reassurance that she's fine and will be up soon. She smiles warmly, certain that she can feel her mother's laughter, even if she can't see her. Baby Fina stirs with a cute expression, which her mother observes with delight, finding it completely new and adorable. Hold. The mother picks up Fina, lovingly asking if she's moving because she can sense her mother's worry. Pat. Pat. She cuddles Fina, explaining that her beauty comes from the love of the spirits. As she speaks, an image of the golden dragon appears, and she adds that Fina is also protected by the dragon. In a magical forest setting, the mother rocks her baby, with a narration stating, "The heavenly god bestowed us with a dragon." Continuing the blessing, the mother explains that Fina was also granted life from water. She stands with the golden dragon Kirasath, who gently gazes at the smiling baby in her arms. In a quiet room, she rocks her sleeping child, a picture of maternal peace. The scene shifts to an exterior view of the grand mansion at night. A caption introduces the peacefully sleeping infant as Marquise Makira's youngest daughter, 2-month-old Fina Makira. Lying in bed beside her husband, the mother thinks with worry that Fina never moves. Appear. A radiant blonde spirit materializes, hushing someone and calling out for Ariel. She is Ignis, the spirit king of light. Whoosh! A green streak of light swirls into the room, reassuringly saying it's okay. A man with green hair appears beside the crib, explaining that humans cannot hear them. He is Ariel, the spirit king of wind. Ignis notes Fina is different, while Ariel wonders if she's unable to wake up and considers poking her. Ooh! Ignis smiles as she senses another presence, announcing a new guest has arrived just in time. Poof! The spirit king of water, Naiad, materializes with a gesture of her hand. Ariel greets Naiad, who observes that he and Ignis arrived before her. Rumble! Boom! A fiery bird swoops into the room, declaring they had to come after Kursoth's summons. The fiery bird transforms into the spirit king of fire, Felix, and the spirit king of earth, Oriad. Felix exclaims her amazement at the distinct soul born to the Machiras. Appear. The dark, antlered silhouette of the spirit king of darkness, Arcane, manifests in the room. Felix expresses her surprise, noting to Ignis that Arcane's presence was unexpected. She continues her thought, musing that Arcane never leaves Kursoth's side, and wondering why he is here first. Naiad shakes a bickering Felix and Ariel, explaining that Arcane is the reason Fina hasn't woken up. The cause is revealed. Lesser spirits of darkness called Despire are surrounding the sleeping Fina. Oriad watches with Naiad, acknowledging that he now understands the situation. He realizes this is why the baby was described by God as being distinct from all others. A divine O is shown, described as the greatest gift from God, the gift of oblivion. Naiad questions why God didn't grant Fina oblivion, as no soul has ever been born without it. Oriad finds the situation amusing, but Felix leans forward, sensing a bigger problem at hand. Bustle! Fina stirs in her sleep as the spirits sense an enormous amount of mana emanating from her. Felix turns to the other spirits, asking if they remember the 5 legendary heroes of Drawford. Ariel recalls the ancient heroes who fought evil alongside Kursoth a long time ago. Felix reveals, with a stunned expression, that this child has more mana than all 5 heroes combined. The other spirits cry out in absolute shock at her revelation. Ignis realizes that this immense power is why Arcane sent the Despires to keep her asleep. She explains that if Fina were to remember her past life, she would lose control of her mana, causing chaos. Oriad, Naiad, and Felix listen intently, their expressions grim. Ariel and Ignis share a look of grave understanding. Shine, Ignis glows with light, declaring that it's time for the baby to wake up. She addresses Fina directly, calling her the distinct soul. The 5 spirits gather, stating they are messengers of God and Kursoth, ready to enact the divine will. They explain they cannot grant oblivion, but will ensure she doesn't suffer from past memories. Hearing this, Fina begins to cry. Uwa. Ignis bestows the blessings and protection of the spirit of light upon the crying child. Wusha. Ariel grants his blessings and protection as the spirit of wind. Blazing Phoenix offers her blessings and protection as the spirit of fire. Rumble Oriad gives his blessings and protection as the spirit of earth. Swish Naiad grants her blessings and protection as the spirit of water. Touch. Arcane's shadow reaches down into the crib toward the wailing Fina. Softly, the shadow gently caresses Fina's head, calming her. A loud ooh-ah echoes from the mansion as the baby's cries ring out for the first time. Startled from his sleep, Fina's father sits up, awakened by his daughter's cries. He stands in disbelief, listening to the loud wailing fill the room. Balls! Fina is shown crying with all her might, tears streaming down her face. Her father excitedly wakes his wife, Monia, exclaiming with joy that Fina is finally crying loudly. Balls! Fina continues to cry with all her might, letting out a powerful wail. Monia worries if Fina is hurt, but Caleb, holding the baby, confirms she has no fever and seems fine. Caleb reassures the still worried Monia, suggesting they call a doctor instead of going to the temple. As he wonders about her loud crying, Caleb is surprised to see Fina has stopped and is looking right at him. Overjoyed, Monia and Caleb gasp in amazement, realizing it's the first time Fina has ever opened her eyes. Caleb smiles warmly at Monia, telling her Fina will be beautiful because she takes after her. He leans in, gives Fina a gentle kiss, and formally introduces himself as her dad. Fina blinks at him with teary eyes as Monia happily observes that she stopped crying for her daddy. The moment is shattered as Fina immediately starts wailing at the top of her lungs again. Her powerful cries once again echo from the grand mansion into the night. Kim Hansel's consciousness is annoyed by the incessant crying, impatiently waiting for the anesthesia to wear off so she can wake up. In a dark void, her awareness is drawn to a growing brightness. The light resolves into Caleb's smiling face, leaving her utterly bewildered as she hears his unintelligible words. Seeing Monia's face as well, Kim Hansel's confusion deepens into shock. She panics internally, remembering she collapsed at the subway and feeling a sense of movement she can't control. Replaying the kiss from her new perspective, she reacts with a jolt of alarm. Now in Fina's body, she is disgusted by the kiss, internally accusing the foreign guy of sexual harassment. Her panic grows as she perceives her parents as giants, mentally screaming for these strange people to release her. While Caleb gently pats her back, she continues to cry and internally demand that he stop touching her. She squirms frantically in her parents' arms, who watch with concerned expressions. She stares in disbelief at her own tiny hand, the first piece of her new reality starting to click. Looking down at her bulging baby belly, she wonders if she just got bloated from a long hospital stay. She tries to calm down to assess her stiff, unresponsive body, but only baby noises escape her lips. Flapping her arms in frustration, she despairs over her inability to speak, only able to make cooing sounds. A wave of pure dread washes over her as the horrifying possibility dawns on her. Her internal scream echoes with her cries as she realizes the unbelievable truth. She's been reborn as a baby. Lying in her crib, she babbles helplessly, infuriated that she can't even swear to vent her frustration. Overwhelmed and flustered, Fina can only think that her new situation is too much to handle. Monia peers into the crib, lovingly calling Fina's name. Fia responds with a defiant babble, mentally telling the woman to go away. Monia smiles gracefully, misinterpreting the sound as a cute reply. Fina recalls Monia's name, admitting to herself that the woman is the most beautiful person she has ever seen. Tapping the blanket, she comes to the unbelievable conclusion that this gorgeous woman is her new mother. Monia picks her up for a walk, much to Fina's internal dismay as she just wants to be left alone. The scene transitions to a sprawling, sunlit garden with an ornate fountain. As Monia carries her through the beautiful garden, Fina gasps at the sight. Fina looks around, dazed by the luxury she glimpsed on her way outside. Her mind reels as she comprehends the mansion's immense size and vast number of staff. Standing by the fountain, she wonders just how rich her new family is when two gardeners greet Monia. Monia proudly introduces Fina to the smiling gardeners, who bow in welcome. The gardeners shower Fina with compliments about her beauty, attributing it to the spirit king of water. Fina stares blankly as they speak, unable to understand a single word of the foreign language. Confused and overwhelmed by the unfamiliar sounds, Fina bursts into tears once again. Back in her crib and feeling utterly hopeless, she wishes someone would just kill her instead. As a nanny approaches, Fina sighs internally, lamenting that the shame and humiliation are endless. The narration specifies her two greatest sources of torment: breast milk and diapers. On days she refused to eat, the nanny would simply force her mouth open and feed her anyway. Fina concedes that as bad as breastfeeding is, it's still more bearable than the alternative. The ultimate shame was having her diaper changed, a process so mortifying she felt like she'd rather die. The nanny and a maid burst into laughter over Fina's adorable antics. Lying in her crib, Fina despairs over her helpless body and wonders how long she must endure living with strangers. In a flashback, two women watch a news report about a 14-year-old girl killed in a hate crime. Hansel's mother and another woman express their sorrow, agreeing that no parent could live normally after losing their child. Hansel remembers wanting to hug her distressed mother but being unable to at the time. Tears welling in her eyes, Fina now wonders if her own parents' hearts are aching because she died. Her sad thoughts are interrupted as a young boy with blonde hair peers curiously into her crib. He calls out Fina's name and plays peekaboo, revealing a bright, cheerful smile. She pictures him as a tiny, adorable angel. Staring at the boy, Fina concludes that with parents like Monia and Caleb, his good looks are no surprise. She recalls seeing Caleb with a sword and deduces his job must be related to swordsmanship. The boy leans over her crib, joyfully telling his baby sister how pretty she is. HMPH, Fina pouts, internally denying her new identity and trying to dismiss her growing affection. He offers her a black flower, asking if she wants it. Fina babbles, recognizing the flower from a walk as the first black one she's ever seen. Grunty earnestly pushes the small bouquet of black flowers toward her as a gift. While she appreciates the thoughtful gesture, Fina internally frets that it's dangerous to place such an object near a baby. She holds the flower close, deciding she likes its color because it reminds her of the darkness in her dream. He thanks her for accepting the gift and proudly tells her the flower is called a shea. As he happily explains there are more in the garden, Fina thinks that he will surely make a good brother. The thought of a good brother triggers a memory of a haggard young man from her past life, asking when she's coming home. In the flashback, she argues with her brother about buying popsicles in winter, now wondering if he's in the military. Back in the present, the nanny gently soothes Fina, who begins to feel sleepy. Drifting off, she processes the unbelievable truth. She died and was reincarnated in an unknown foreign era. With newfound determination, Fina resolves to find a way back home, realizing she must first learn to move. She knows she can't do much until her body grows, so she considers what's possible while she's still lying down. Flap, flap! An idea hits her as she kicks her feet excitedly. She must learn the language. As the nanny sings, Fina commits to listening closely, believing she can pick up the language to find a way home. She happily drools and babbles, fully engaged in her new mission to learn. Flinch, a maid, gasps in surprise, exclaiming that it's happened again. Entering a room, she asks when Fina escaped, worried she'll be in trouble with the madam. Focus, the 7-month-old Fina Makaira is found sitting in the library, completely absorbed in a large book. The maid stands at the library entrance, pleading for Miss Fina to return to her room. She reaches for Fina, worried the child will get sick from the cold. Slap! Fina smacks her hand away with a cry as the nanny bursts in, asking a maid named Sally if the miss is here. Phew! The nanny sighs, then struggles to pick up the flailing Fina, scolding her for running off into the cold. Fina continues to wail, her constant desire for books being seen as a mere obsession by the household staff. When her brother, Felix, would read with their parents, Fina would whine, desperate to read too. Reading with her family, she would become so engrossed in the book that she'd fall asleep in their arms. In the beginning, the nanny and Sally were delighted, believing she would grow into a great person. But Fina acted unexpectedly, more interested in crawling on books than playing with toys like Felix. One day, Fina vanished from her cradle, sending Monia and Caleb into a panic as they searched the grounds. Bang! Caleb finally found her in the study, quietly reading all by herself. Squeeze! Her parents embraced her in a tearful, relieved hug. Each time she was found in the study, the nanny would take her back to her room, and Fina would cry until exhausted. Back in her crib, Fina throws a tantrum, shouting her desire to be left alone. Slam! She furiously swings a toy, remembering how she endured everything just to finally learn how to read. Reflecting on her new world, Fina recalls seeing her parents wield fire and water, realizing they use magic. Fina recalls seeing a gardener place his hand on the dirt and mumble something during a walk with Monia. To her amazement, worms swarmed from the ground at his command. She also remembers the nanny using wind to move an object in her room. Recalling Caleb's fire and Monia's healing water, Fina confirms that magic is real in this world. Believing magic is her only hope, she decides she must figure it out and begins climbing from her crib. Flop! She lands on the floor with grim determination. Crawling away from her crib, she strengthens her resolve, knowing this isn't her world. Phew! She pauses to catch her breath, realizing a room-by-room search for books is too inefficient. A memory sparks an idea as she remembers a specific place. She recalls Monia holding her before a dusty storage room, the memory of the smell still vivid. From that very room, Caleb had emerged with a massive, thick book. Fina now stands before the same imposing doors, ready to investigate. Squeak! She struggles to push the heavy door open, mustering all her baby strength. Peeking into the gloomy interior, she finds the storage room dark and foreboding. The creepy atmosphere is enhanced by sheet-covered furniture and a silent suit of armor. Undeterred by the eerie setting, her eyes land on towering bookshelves. She's found them. Wiggling with excitement, she crawls toward her prize. Suddenly, she floats into the air, caught by an unseen force. Startled, she looks back to see who stopped her. Glare. It's Monia, looking down with a stern, disapproving expression. The narrative pauses for a promotional page showcasing the author's other works and Discord community chats. Monia's voice rings out, filled with anger as she shouts Fina's name. She furiously scolds Fina for being in a dangerous place, worried she could have been hurt. Fina flails and cries, mentally demanding to be let go, while a distraught Monia questions her behavior. Monia's voice cracks with sorrow, asking if Fina hates her so much she can't even stand to see her. Fina internally screams that she hates it all and desperately wants to go back home. She remembers her family and her unfulfilled life as a new college student. Flash, her desperation builds as she declares she doesn't belong here and will return to her world. Rumble, the entire mansion begins to shake violently as she wishes to be left alone. As her rage peaks, a tree outside rips apart and a window shatters from the unseen force. Inside, the household staff panics as a man orders everyone to get to safety. A powerful gust sends Monia stumbling back. Monia desperately calls out to a crying Fina, shaking her gently. The mansion rumbles violently, causing Monia to fall while shielding Fina. Crash! As debris falls around them, Monia holds Fina tight, reassuring her that it's okay. With a determined smile, Monia promises to protect her child. Fina recognizes the familiar warmth of being protected that she felt just before her death. Bam! Monia shields Fina with her own body as the room crumbles around them. After the chaos subsides, Monia breathlessly asks the nanny if everyone, including Felix, is all right. The nanny cries out in horror, revealing that Monia's back is bleeding heavily from her injuries. She begs Monia to hand Fina over and get help from the master. Monia calmly refuses, deciding to take Fina to her room herself and asking the nanny not to tell Caleb yet. The nanny protests, but Monia quickly hushes her. Monia tells her not to startle Fina and sends her to check on Felix. The nanny hesitates, concerned, but Monia firmly tells her to hurry. As the nanny leaves, Monia stands alone with Fina amidst the rubble. Dazed, Fina stares at the blood soaking through Monia's dress, shocked by the sight. Faltering, Monia places Fina in her crib, asking if she was scared but assuring her it's all right now. Fina internally panics, wishing Monia would stop worrying about her and tend to her own bleeding wound. As Monia strokes her cheek, calling her sweet, Fina desperately thinks her mother is being foolish for not worrying about herself. Monia smiles through her tears, calling her thoughtful, lovely child Fina for not crying. Overwhelmed with guilt, Fina now weeps, internally questioning why this had to happen. The nanny informs Felix that Monia has fainted and still hasn't woken up. A tearful Felix begs to see his mother, but the nanny gently tells him children aren't allowed inside. A gaunt Caleb arrives and Felix rushes to his father. Caleb comforts Felix, reassuring him that Monia is getting treatment and asking him to wait patiently. Holding Fina, Caleb worriedly asks his daughter if she's all right after the shocking event. He holds her tighter, promising that for her sake, their mother will surely recover soon. As Caleb comforts her, Fina stares back with a stoic, unreadable expression. Fina recalls her new family, narrating that they were the ones who always thwarted her plans to return home. She reflects that Monia was the most stressful because her affection only intensified Fina's longing for her real mother. Flashing back to Monia's pained smile, Fina admits she never intended for her to get hurt. In a strange new place, Hansel leans against a tree, burdened by guilt over Monia's injury. She can't get Monia's smiling face out of her head, admitting the memory is driving her crazy. Looking at the giant trees around her, Hansel wonders where on earth she is. Glanced, she realizes she's in a forest, as a mysterious light begins to shine from her chest. She finds herself standing before a massive, ancient tree by a sparkling body of water. Sparkle, sparkle, she stares in wide-eyed wonder at the magical scene before her. Ah! The ground suddenly rumbles violently and she screams, thinking it's an earthquake. Plop, she loses her balance and falls to the ground with a cry of pain. Eek! A massive golden dragon suddenly appears before her, and she freezes in terror. The dragon's brilliant blue eyes focus on her, identifying her as one who bears a distinct soul. It formally welcomes her, calling her Atito, and announcing her arrival in the land of spirits. Boom! As the dragon reveals its full majesty, Hansel recognizes the spirits land Atito from Felix's storybook. The narration from the book describes it as an unknown, holy territory that has existed since creation. The book explains it is the home of all spirits, ruled over by a divine entity. Hansel gets to her feet, determined to confront the massive creature. She boldly shouts at the golden dragon, demanding that it send her back home immediately. The dragon declares her request impossible, even as Hansel worries about her family waiting for her to wake up. Annoyed, she scoffs that things like time travel and crossing dimensions only happen in movies. Oosh! The dragon explains that its role is to communicate the will of the great god. It reveals the god chose her foreign soul to rule this world, but Hansel furiously rejects this, shouting that it's all lies and demanding to be sent back to her family. The dragon asks if her family isn't here, but Hansel insists Monia and Caleb are Fina's family, not hers. When the dragon insists she is Fina, Hansel yells in frustration that she is not. She's struck by a sudden doubt, wondering if she, Kim Hansel, is truly a different person from the baby Fina. A traumatic memory of being injured flashes through her mind, causing her to grab her head in pain. In a parallel scene, Caleb sits vigil, apologizing for his failure to protect Monia. Lying injured in bed, Monia tells him it's all right as long as their children are safe. She frets over Fina, worried the baby was traumatized by seeing her get hurt. As her wound is treated, Monia's only thought is a prayer for Fina's safety. The devastating truth hits Hansel. She realizes it truly was her fault that Monia was injured. The dragon explains Monia is content because she protected her daughter, fulfilling a parent's deepest wish. Hansel is stunned, realizing Monia protected her as a daughter even though she never accepted her as a mother. She recalls cruelly slapping Monia's face away, overwhelmed by guilt for her past behavior. Clutching her aching chest, Hansel breaks down in tears. Leaning against the dragon for support, she sobs, fondly remembering her mother's simple but delicious cooking. She cries for her father, recalling his love for meat and his playful arguments with her mom. She wails, complaining about her annoying brother, who always bothered her but who she misses dearly. Through her tears, she vows to do all his errands without complaint, if only she could go back to him. Overcome with grief, she screams out her desperate longing to see her mom, dad, and brother again. Sniff, Hansel rubs her tear-filled eyes, reflecting on how much she cried. She watches the dragon, thinking it strange for patiently waiting until she was calm. As she calms down, Hansel begins to admire the dragon's beautiful golden scales. The dragon explains that it cannot erase her past memories, as not even the great god possesses that power. Instead of asking to go home, Hansel makes a new request: to completely heal Monia's injury, leaving no scar. The dragon notes that Hansel never accepted Monia as family, yet Monia protected her, leading Hansel to realize she cried because she finally considers Monia her mother. With a bright, relieved smile, Hansel declares she's tired of fighting and wants to stop resisting her new life. Looking down at her with understanding, the dragon agrees to grant her wish. The dragon formally introduces itself as the representative, who communicates the will of the great god of heaven. The dragon hopes her sadness and struggles won't be in vain, finding its own happiness in granting her wish through its protection. The dragon looks down at her and asks for the name from her previous life. She introduces herself as Kim Hansel, a name the dragon promises that it and Atito will remember as it watches her live her new life as Fina. Blink. Fina's eyes open. She is back in her crib. She remembers being in Atito with the dragon, whom she now identifies as Kursoth. Creak. The door opens and the nanny cheerfully enters, wishing the young master and Miss a good morning. The nanny lifts Fina, commenting on how early she woke up while Felix sleeps soundly nearby. The nanny notes Fina's unusual calmness, as she normally cries when touched, while Fina wonders if this is a dream or reality. Wah! As Felix sits up in bed, he immediately asks the nanny about his mother. With a radiant smile, the nanny announces that Monia is all better and completely healed, shocking Fina. Really? Dash! An overjoyed Felix leaps from the bed and runs out of the room. Rush, he calls for his mother as he disappears down the hall, with the nanny anxiously calling after the young master. With tears of joy, Fina notes Felix didn't even wash his face, feeling immense relief that Monia is truly healed. The nanny brings Fina into the room, where Felix is already buried in his mother's embrace on the bed. Felix asks if the owie is gone, and Monia explains that the spirits came and healed her during the night. Fina realizes with a happy blush that it's real. Kursoth kept his promise and granted her wish. As Monia takes Fina, the nanny expresses her confusion, questioning what really happened when all the doctors had said there was no hope. A flashback reveals a different scene. Tremble, a woman collapses in a forest, her leg badly injured. In the memory, she thinks that losing the use of her shoulder is a small price to pay for protecting her precious Fina. She looks up from the ground to see a tall, cloaked figure holding Fina. Rush! The woman scrambles toward the figure, desperately shouting Fina's name. Hugging Fina tightly, she asks if she's alright, reassuring the baby that mommy is here now. The cloaked figure points, revealing that this scene is the fulfillment of the wish her daughter begged it to grant. Whoosh! A magical force emanates from the cloaked figure toward the woman. She recalls how a sudden white light healed her injury, while a black light erased all the pain. The glowing, cloaked figure declares that Atito will watch over them all from now on. Back in the present, Fina lets out a happy giggle, smiling brightly. Elsewhere, Felix, the Spirit King of Fire, expresses disbelief, flanked by Ariel, Spirit King of Wind, and Oreed, Spirit King of Earth. Felix angrily questions how Fina's mana could run wild despite receiving blessings and protection from all 6 Spirit Kings, accusing someone of carelessness. She blames Ariel, whose realm is wind, for the mansion's destruction, but he defensively retorts that he was just as shocked. As Felix and Ariel continue to argue, a stressed Oreed pleads for them to stop. Oreed calmly states there was no issue with Ariel's blessing, telling Felix they all would have noticed a flaw. 2 more figures appear, Naiad, Spirit King of Water, and Ignis, Spirit King of Light, as Oread questions if their combined power is not enough to control the child's mana. Rustle, as a horned shadow passes by, Ignis explains that the 6 blessings themselves are what caused the havoc. Ariel adds that the most unbelievable part is her using magic without a contract, which is normally required for all humans. Felix confirms Fina only has their blessings, not a contract, which Ariel adds can only be formed when a child turns 5. Oread wonders if she subconsciously used great magic, speculating that she has surpassed the world's rules, which may be why the god chose her soul. He looks on with concern, voicing the possibility that she could lose control of her power in the future. Ignis declares that if her mana becomes too powerful for their protection to contain, there is only one method left. The other spirits look on with anxious expressions as Felix stammers, realizing the implication of her words. Ignis reveals their only option. On her 5th birthday, Fina must form a contract with all 6 of the Spirit Kings. 2 months later, snow gently falls upon the mansion. Caleb returns home and smothers Fina in kisses, calling her his pretty thing. Fina squirms to avoid his kisses, internally protesting. Not the lips, no! Caleb is stunned, realizing with surprise that this is a rare chance since Fina is actually accepting his kisses. Monia gently chides Caleb, suggesting Fina will dislike his cold lips, and tells him to go get changed. Monia muses that Caleb will probably cry when Fina says daddy for the first time. Fina wriggles and babbles, joking to herself that if she studied this hard for the SATs, she'd have gone to Harvard. Ha! Elsewhere, a young Felix charges at Caleb with a toy sword. Ta-da! Felix stands triumphantly on his father's back, declaring victory. Watching from nearby, Fina thinks, awe, at the scene. Felix gets Caleb's attention, excitedly announcing that Fina's nose wiggles. Twitch he demonstrates by scrunching his own face, but Caleb still looks utterly confused. Caleb wonders aloud what his son is doing as Monia and Fina watch on. Thump! Monia closes her book, explaining it's a trick Fina can do well, leaving a disappointed Caleb feeling left out. Tap! Monia gently touches Fina's nose, asking her to demonstrate. Twitch, twitch, Fina's little nose wiggles cutely on command. Caleb bursts into laughter, delightedly exclaiming that she's just like a squirrel. Overcome with joy, he gushes about how cute she is as an adorable squirrel version of Fina appears. Caleb asks where she learned it, and Monia explains she simply saw her reflection in a mirror and figured it out. The family shares a happy moment, and Fina reflects that they are warm and comfortable, like a family from a fairy tale. Throb! A memory of her stern and unhappy past family flashes through her mind, reminding her of how different things were. Looking at her new parents, Fina affirms to herself that she can call Monia mom and Caleb dad. She stares into a fireplace, admitting that while she's decided to accept them, she hasn't fully opened her heart or forgotten her past life. Fina knows they would be happy if she called them mum and dad, but she can't find the courage to say the words. Sink, she buries her face in her stuffed toy, feeling guilty for her hesitation. Snore, Monia notices Fina has drifted off to sleep. The nanny offers to put Fina to bed, but Monia decides to do it herself, asking the nanny to take Felix inside instead. Lift! Monia picks up Fina, lovingly commenting on how her little cutie is getting heavier every day. She slowly enters the bedroom, where Felix is already waiting on the large bed. Tap, tap, she lovingly pokes Fina's nose, marveling at how such a pretty baby came to her. Pat, Pat, she gently pats both sleeping children, calling Fina her lovely, adorable daughter. Monia smiles warmly, telling Fina that she loves her and that this love is the source of her happiness. She kisses a sleeping Felix, telling him she loves him too and is thankful for how strong he's grown. Slide, as a stuffed bunny falls from the bed, Fina's thoughts reassure her that everything is okay. A faint memory of her mother from her previous life surfaces, smiling down at her. Noticing the dropped toy, Monia tells Fina that mommy will pick it up for her. Rustle, she bends down and picks up the fallen bunny doll. Smiling at Fina, she playfully comments on how diligently her daughter is cooing. Turn, Fina looks directly at Monia and calls out, "Ma, Ma." With tears forming in her eyes, she sits up and reaches a hand out. Her face streaked with tears, Fina cries out her first real word, "Mama." Pit-a-pat, Monia's heart pounds in her chest as the bunny doll slips from her hand in shock. Drop. The doll lands softly on the floor. Toddle. Fiona makes her way toward her mother, still calling for her. Clutch. Monia sweeps her into a tight embrace, overcome with emotion as she realizes Fina called her mom for the first time. Crying tears of joy, Monia hugs Fina close, reassuring her that her mom is right here. Resting in the embrace, Fina thinks to herself how warm and cozy her mom's hug feels. 3 years later, the scene shifts to the mansion on a warm spring day. From a stone courtyard below, Felix calls up to Fina. An older Felix stands in the garden, calling out for Fina and asking where she is. Wah! He looks up in shock as Fina suddenly drops into view upside down, calling out to her brother. A flustered Felix turns away, telling her she scared him. Now perched in a tree, 4-year-old Fina Makira proudly announces that she can climb trees too. A worried 7-year-old Felix Makira looks up, reminding her that their mother told her not to climb because she could get hurt. Fina hops down, saying it's fine if she doesn't get caught, while Felix warns her to get the leaves off her clothes before Glenn sees. He brushes leaves from her shoulders, explaining he's only scolding her because it seems like she will get hurt. Finished, Felix sighs in relief, declaring her all clean now. Hee hee. Fina simply giggles and twirls away playfully. Felix reaches out his hand, telling her it's time to go inside because their mother is calling for them. Walking hand in hand, Felix tells a shocked Fina that their new baby brother, Florence, has woken up. Fina excitedly pulls him along, telling him to hurry, while he anxiously tells her not to run so fast. Wobble. Fina stands on her tiptoes, straining to see into a crib. Inside the crib, the family's second son, a baby named Florence Makira, babbles happily. Fia leans over the crib with a big smile, asking her baby brother if he slept well. Monia watches them, commenting on how adorable the scene is, and noting how much Fina seems to like him. Fina happily tells her mother it's because it's her first time having a younger sibling, internally adding that she was always the youngest in her past life. As Felix makes faces at a crying Florence, Fina watches with a thoughtful expression. She reflects on how calm Florence is, unlike her dark past when she tried to escape her own crib. Later, Monia holds up a leaf and asks Fina if she climbed the tree again. Fina proudly says yes, much to her mother's exasperation. Fina pouts that she's not allowed outside, envying her brother, and Felix whispers it's because he has a contract with a spirit. A narration explains that all children in the Empire form a contract with a spirit at a temple when they turn 5. Monia watches her daughter's frustration with a gentle, knowing smile. Pat, she reassures Fina by patting her head, reminding her she will be making her own contract next year. Monia then surprises Fina by asking if they should get ready to go out. She gives Fina a wink, explaining that today is an important day. Outside, Monia thanks the nanny for watching Florence, who says the children should be out soon to join her in the waiting carriage. Dazzling, Fina appears in a beautiful new yellow dress. Monia gushes that Fina looks as pretty as a doll and asks if the dress was a present from Uncle Douglas. Fina explains that someone named Sally picked it out for their visit to the Afflor Company, and Monia praises her good sense. Creak. The grand gates open as the horse-drawn carriage departs from the mansion. Inside the carriage, Monia suggests they eat lunch at a place called Sinacios. The children cheer in agreement, with Fina excitedly chanting for pie. Monia adds they will visit the Afflor Company afterward and compliments Felix on his teacher's report of his progress in magic. Fina beams, telling her brother he's impressive as they share a happy laugh. Monia tells a stunned Felix she will give him a magic stone as a present for his hard work. Yahoo! An ecstatic Felix pumps his fist in the air, celebrating his reward. Fina curiously asks what a magic stone is, and Monia explains that it helps with casting complex spells. Fina asks if her mother has one, and Monia confirms it's something she sees often. Shine, Monia touches the glowing green brooch on her collar, revealing it is her magic stone. Fina stares in disbelief, realizing the brooch she dismissed as simple jewelry was actually a powerful artifact. Monia explains that magic stones can be conveniently shaped into other items, like brooches. Felix proudly adds that their father's sword is also a magic stone. Flare, a vision of Caleb with a glowing sword, flashes as Fina wonders in amazement if magic stones can become weapons. Monia confirms it's a convenient form for Caleb as an Imperial guard, inspiring Felix to declare he'll make his into a sword too. Felix's eyes twinkle with ambition while Fina sits with a blank expression, absorbing the revelation. Flinch Monia asks Fina if she is also interested in magic, causing her to jump in surprise. Fina quickly shakes her head, denying any interest at all. Fina reflects on her conflicted feelings about magic. It's amazing, but she's afraid of it after accidentally hurting Monia in the past. The family's carriage travels through the noisy and bustling Caliber Square on the main street of the Drafarkuth Imperial City. Wah! Children run through the crowded street, excitedly brandishing toy swords near the carriage. Fina and Felix peer out the window, with Fina thinking how new and exciting the city is every time they visit. The scene pans over the city, described as a magical land blessed by the Golden Dragon and loved by spirits. Whoa! Felix spots a circus troupe outside and excitedly points it out to Fina. Whoosh! A performer on the street breathes a spectacular plume of fire, captivating the onlookers. Arriving at a restaurant, an attendant greets Marchioness Makaira and leads her toward a prepared private room. As they walk through the restaurant, patrons whisper about the Makaira family's rare public appearance together. Glance, Fina looks down, acknowledging that as a member of such a famous family, being the center of attention is unavoidable. Monia proudly explains to the attendant that the Makaira house descends from a legendary female hero who founded the empire. Fina smiles as the story continues, learning her ancestors have served as captain of the Imperial Guards for generations. Clutch, Fina hides behind Monia, sighing that the piercing gazes are an inevitable part of being from such an honorable family. The attendant pauses dramatically before turning to announce that their dessert will be malum pie. Felix and Fina's eyes sparkle as they both imagine a delicious, steaming pie appearing before them. A narration explains that malhem is Fina's favorite fruit, tasting like honey-drenched apples and reminding her of her past life. Sinashio's specialty, a beautifully latticed malum pie, is presented steaming at their table. Fina sighs in delight, drooling slightly as she whispers how delicious the pie looks. Declining Felix's offer of help, Fina confidently stabs her fork into the crispy pie crust. Fina closes her eyes, savoring the satisfying feeling of cutting through the perfect crust. The pie's sweet and thick flavors, reminiscent of apples and flowers, are described as melting deliciously in her mouth. A baker is shown preparing the dessert as its dense, sweet filling and moist cream are praised. Fina sighs in pure bliss, declaring the pie has a simply heavenly taste. Monia fondly notes how much Fina enjoys eating, while Felix proudly boasts of his sister's excellent cutlery skills. Her mouth full, Fina turns to her brother and asks him what kind of magic he can use. Felix bashfully explains that he only has contracts with lesser spirits, so he can't do anything impressive yet. Fina's eyes beam as she tells her brother he's awesome, and he shyly replies that everything she does is amazing. Whoosh. Fina cheers for her brother as Felix raises his fork in a triumphant cheer. Monia smiles warmly, explaining that Felix's goal of reshaping a magic stone is a very difficult task. She elaborates that one must be completely familiar with an object to transform a magic stone and use magic to maintain its shape. Monia encourages a hopeful Felix, telling him she knows he can succeed because of his diligence, and he vows to work hard. Their next stop is the Grand Eflore Company building, where a man waves to them from the entrance. The man is introduced as Douglas Parsi, Monia's younger brother, and the Count of the House of Parsi. Felix runs to greet his uncle, as the narration explains the Parsi family manages the affluent Eflore Company. Hug. Douglas warmly embraces Felix, happily exclaiming how much he has grown. Fina playfully hides behind Monia, planning to surprise her uncle, and Monia calls her a little prankster. Douglas asks Felix about the magic stone, and Felix excitedly confirms his mother is giving it to him as a gift. As Douglas holds Felix, Fina continues to hide shyly behind her mother's dress. Monia thanks her brother for taking the time to meet them while he is so busy. Douglas spots Fina hiding and playfully asks his pretty, wild niece how long she plans to stay there. Fina steps out from behind her mother, holds out her dress, and gives a proper greeting to her uncle. Ta-da! She looks up at him with a bright, charming smile. Whoa, overcome with emotion, Douglas wipes a tear away, gushing about how cute and lovely his niece and nephew are. Inside, Douglas asks about his brother-in-law, and Monia explains that Caleb is working but wished he could have come. Douglas expresses concern that Caleb is too busy, but Monia reassures him it's a temporary mission at Dominatio Palace. Whoa, Fina and Felix marvel at the fantastic items displayed inside the company. Sitting together, Douglas gets sentimental, remarking how quickly time has passed and that he can't believe Felix is already 7. Wow, Monia and the children gasp in amazement at something presented before them. Felix beams with pure, uncontainable excitement for his gift. Bottom Felix's heart pounds with anticipation as he holds the ornate box containing his new magic stone. Bottom Fina's heart pounds as she marvels at the idea of a magic stone superior even to the imperial families. Felix's eyes widen in absolute awe as he lets out a gasp of, wow. Babam Fina reels back in shock, utterly confused by what she sees. Rubbing her eyes in disbelief, Fina thinks she must have seen wrong, amazed by the sight. Her eyes turn white with shock as she holds the box, thinking there is no way this can be real. Dudum Fina opens the box to reveal not a sparkling gem, but a dull, lumpy black rock. Incredulous, she thinks that the object looks exactly like a piece of coal, not a magic stone. Her excitement drains away into extreme disappointment, as she thinks it looks more like a regular pebble. Douglas proudly asks if the gift is marvelous, while an ecstatic Felix asks if it's really his. Bam! Fina shoves the box at her brother, declaring it's horse poop, but he angrily insists it's a magic stone. Angry, Felix clutches the box, arguing that it's a precious magic stone, while Fina sadly mutters it still looks like poop. Douglas laughs kindly, explaining that it's understandable for Fina to be confused, since she hasn't learned magic yet. Shine! To demonstrate, Douglas's fist begins to radiate with a brilliant red and yellow magical light. Fina gasps in wonder as Douglas reveals a beautiful glowing gem, realizing that's what she imagined. Whoosh! He tosses the stone into the air and it dramatically transforms into a magnificent staff. Glow! Douglas smiles, holding the ornate staff that his magic stone has become. He explains that his own magic stone was also an extremely dark, unimpressive rock at first, just like Felix's. Fina asks why his and Monia's stones are pretty now, and he explains it's due to the mana infused within them. A narration explains that magic stones are made of an ore called void, which has a black surface but a milky interior. As the stone absorbs a person's mana, its surface brightens and adopts their magic type, creating a distinct mystical appearance. Douglas clarifies that the darker and uglier a stone is initially, the more magic it can absorb, making it more valuable. Shine! A wave of understanding and excitement washes over Felix as he clutches his precious stone. Douglas explains that the stone's color will reflect Felix's contracts with wind and earth spirits, a trait from his parents. Nod. Douglas kindly asks Fina if she understands, and she nods back at him. He leans in and affectionately promises to get her a magnificent magic stone when it's her turn. Douglas gives her a sparkling smile, telling her to look forward to it. The scene transitions to an exterior view of the grand and beautiful Makaira mansion. Step, step. As Felix heads upstairs, Monia calls out his name. Monia smiles warmly at her son, promising to teach him how to store magic in his stone later that evening. Felix's face lights up with pure joy as he asks if she really means it. Monia cautions him to wait patiently until then, as it will be difficult, and he eagerly agrees. Heh. A happy Felix runs up the stairs after bidding his mother a good rest. As her children head off, Monia watches with a weary sigh. Fina nods sleepily, wishing she could grow up faster and lamenting that 4 years is too long to wait. Monia gently asks a drowsy Fina if she wants to sleep in her room, and she quietly agrees. Wriggle, Florence babbles happily in his crib. Holding the sleepy Fina, Monia smiles at Florence, wondering if he's greeting his big sister. Cozy Fina sleeps peacefully in a large bed, hugging a stuffed bunny. Watching her sleep, Monia reflects on how pretty Fina is. charming enough to capture anyone's attention. Monia thinks that Fina's true charm lies in her warm, lively spirit, which is why adults like Douglas adore her. In a flashback, Monia recalls a mysterious, powerful gust of wind that terrified the manor's staff 3 years ago. She remembers how the wind strangely only targeted the Makaira estate, while she held an infant Fina. A narration explains the estate is a magical fortress, protected by countless barriers cast by high-level magicians. Monia recalls the royal investigator dismissing the event as natural, but she knew with certainty it was magic. Doze, she reveals the caster was none other than a sleeping 7-month-old Fina. Monia smiles, recognizing that her daughter possesses enormous, untapped potential. She gazes lovingly at Fina, certain that her child is blessed with love from the great spirits. Creek, Caleb arrives home late at night, greeted at the door by the head butler. The butler, identified as Albert, bows respectfully and welcomes his master home after a long day of work. As Albert takes his cloak, Caleb asks about the children, and Albert informs him that they all fell asleep waiting for him. Monia smiles warmly, greeting Caleb as he stands before her in his formal attire. Embracing him, Monia tells Caleb he shouldn't have stayed awake for her and asks if he's tired from his hard work. Shalala Monia cheerfully pulls Caleb by the hand, leading him toward the living room. Utterly exhausted, Caleb collapses onto the sofa while Monia sits beside him, admitting his mission was incredibly difficult. Resting his head on Monia's lap, Caleb sighs and complains about the Emperor's demanding nature, while she fondly thinks he's not acting like the Empire's blade. Slide. Monia gently strokes his hair, telling him he doesn't need to be the Empire's blade now, and asking if he took any breaks. Caress. She softly touches his cheek, remarking that he looks like a child right now. Thump. With a grin, Caleb playfully pulls Monia onto his lap, saying it's fine if he's a child at the moment. He looks at her with a tender, affectionate gaze as they share an intimate moment. They share a gentle, heartfelt kiss. Later, Caleb asks about her trip to the Aflor Company, and Monia confirms she gave Felix his promised magic stone. Press, Caleb hugs her from behind, lamenting that he couldn't be there, and expressing his jealousy of Douglas. He then asks if Fina showed any interest in magic. Monia replies uncertainly, noting that Fina was the one who asked about magic stones first. Monia finds this behavior unusual, explaining that Fina typically only gets excited when visiting the town square, not about magic. Caleb hesitates for a moment before speaking, sensing the weight of what he is about to say. Jolt. Monia grabs Caleb in alarm, demanding to know why he suddenly brought up the Imperial Palace. Clench. Caleb solemnly reveals that the Emperor has summoned both Felix and Fina to the palace. Monia reels back in shock, unable to believe what she's just heard. A narration reveals that the young prince, the sole heir to the throne, has a notoriously terrible character. The lonely 4-year-old prince is described as enduring immense pressure and responsibility all by himself. Throb. Monia's heart aches with anger as she questions the absurdity of summoning her young child to the palace for such a purpose. While she knows the Emperor's instincts are nearly prophetic, she remains deeply conflicted and worried. A wave of fear washes over her as she considers the implications for Fina in particular. A vision shows Fina in royal robes, as a narration explains that this visit could be interpreted as her becoming a candidate for the next Empress. Monia worries about Fina being caught in rumors, and, more importantly, that woman is still present at the Imperial Palace. She tells Caleb she can't send Fina there, and he agrees, promising to be exceptionally careful because he understands her fears. Caleb tries to calm a distraught Monia, reassuring her that the Emperor has ensured that woman and her children will never meet theirs. Touch, he gently cups her face and calls her name, but she still looks unconvinced. Embrace, Caleb holds her close, promising that nothing will happen, and that he won't force the children to go if they refuse. The next morning, a lively Caleb happily holds both Fina and Felix, cheerfully wishing everyone a good morning. Monia and the household staff are aghast as she asks Caleb why he brought the children downstairs in their pajamas. A flustered Monia scolds a sheepish Caleb, who forgot to get the kids dressed, while Fina and Felix laugh and run around him. Ekatsium. Plop. As a maid serves her breakfast, Fina politely thanks her for the food. A curious Felix asks Fina why she is always so formal and says thank you. He asks why she doesn't speak informally, to which Fina brightly responds that she is still a child. When Felix presses her about saying thanks, Fina explains that she's grateful for the delicious food they provide. A brief flashback reveals Fina's past life regret of never having said thank you to someone. In her current life, Fina resolves to always express her gratitude, a sentiment that brings a warm smile to the nearby maid. Inspired by their sister, both children begin thanking the staff for preparing the meal, cooking, and cleaning. Overcome with emotion, Albert and the other servants tear up, with Albert thinking how well the children have been raised. Panicked by the tears, Fina and Felix worry they've done something wrong. Monia proudly leans on Caleb, declaring that their wonderful children make her proud to be a mother. Fina happily hops down from her chair, exclaiming that her breakfast of rye toast and scrambled eggs was the best. Caleb reminds Felix of his dream to be a knight, telling him he can see the Imperial guards at the palace, which piques Fina's curiosity. Felix excitedly runs to Fina, announcing that their father is taking them to the Imperial Palace. Fina is shocked by the news, wondering if she's too young for such a formal visit. Her mind races as she remembers that one typically needs a spirit contract before making a public appearance at the palace. Caleb kneels before Fina, gently telling her that he has a special request for her. He explains that there is a boy at the Imperial Palace who is the same age as her, leaving Fina surprised. Caleb reveals that the boy is the Imperial Prince, causing Fina to react with surprise. He explains the prince is having a hard time because he has no friends and doesn't know how to play. Caleb looks at Fina with a gentle and hopeful expression. He praises Fina for her kind heart, her fun-loving spirit, and her habit of always thanking the servants. Caleb asks if she would befriend the prince, causing Fina to worry about how short-tempered he must be. HMPH. Her concern quickly shifts to determination as she decides she can fix the ill-tempered boy herself. Nod. When Caleb asks if she can do it, Fina gives him a bright smile and a confident yes. Felix excitedly thinks it's cool that Fina's first friend will be the prince, while she quietly mulls over the word friend. Caleb beams with pride at his children's exchange, while Monia lets out a weary sigh. Monia realizes with concern that the children, being so young, have not yet had any formal etiquette lessons. She worries that Fina can't very well show up at the palace, scratching her behind in front of the prince. The scene shifts to a grand view of the magnificent Draforkus Imperial Palace. In the palace, an aide reports that the captain will be arriving for sword practice tomorrow and wishes to bring his children. The Imperial Prince, identified as Ofinio Emple Draforkuth, looks up from his books and asks why. The aide stands by patiently, awaiting his master's response. Ofinio's interest is piqued, and he quietly asks who they are. The aide explains that the captain's son is 3 years older than him, while the daughter is his age. Ofinio's ears perk up as he wonders with a hopeful smile if he might finally make a friend. His hopeful reverie is suddenly broken. The aide gently urges Ofinio to finish his studies, reminding him that the Empress Dowager will worry. Returning to his work, Ofinio asks for their names, and the aide tells him they are Felix and Fina. Ofinio thoughtfully repeats their names to himself as he doodles with his quill. The family's carriage travels along a road leading towards a large town. Inside the carriage, Felix excitedly asks about the knight's training, while Fina sits beside him in a gloomy funk. Fina miserably recalls her mother's grueling etiquette lessons, thinking they were far worse than any school exam. She remembers her past life fear upon discovering she was a noble, predicting a bleak future of a political marriage. Startled, Fina is snapped out of her dark thoughts by Felix, who excitedly points out the Imperial Palace. The family beholds the sprawling and magnificent Imperial Palace as they arrive. Caleb explains to the children that their manor is located so close by so he can return to the palace quickly in an emergency. Their carriage door opens, and they are greeted by a knight in a cloak. Caleb helps an eager Fina out of the carriage as Felix happily hops down. The knight greets the captain, and Caleb introduces him to the children as a colleague. The man introduces himself as a first knight of the Imperial Guards, Kanata's favor, and expresses his honor. Fina gives a cheerful curtsy as she and Felix politely introduce themselves. The children are starstruck to meet a real adult knight, shouting in excitement and leaving Kanata stunned. Caleb reassuringly pats a sweating and flustered Kanatas on the shoulder. Step. The children walk beside Kanatas down a hallway, awestruck by the palace's extravagance. Felix eagerly runs up to Kanatas and asks if his father is super strong. Kanatas gives a nervous laugh and agrees, but Felix immediately senses the lack of sincerity in his answer. Kanatas grows serious, explaining the long legacy of the Makaira family and asking Felix if he has the resolve to live up to it. He directs them to a drawing room to wait, explaining that the training will be with His Highness the Prince. Fina is confused, wondering why the prince is training so seriously before having made a contract with a spirit. Felix speculates that the prince is probably allowed to learn early simply because of his royal status. Mwah! Caleb gives Fina a kiss on the head, telling her he has to go to the training ground. Whoosh! Caleb departs down the hall, flanked by his guards. Felix enthusiastically declares that one day he will be a cool captain just like his father. The children peer into a lavish drawing room filled with toys, including a large teddy bear and a snowman. 3 maids greet them, and Fina politely thanks them for their assistance. While Felix marvels at a cool toy sword, Fina excitedly shows him a teddy bear she's found. Which a maid announces the prince's arrival, and the children immediately stop playing and stand at attention. An aide stands beside a young, sullen-looking Ophinio. Gulp, Fina nervously identifies him as Ophinio Emple Draferkuth. A narration explains that, as the prince of the Draferkuth Empire and sole heir, he is next in line for the throne. Point, Felix immediately points at Ophinio, accusing him of being uneducated for not greeting them. A flustered Fina thinks that this is no way to act when meeting someone for the first time. Fina recovers and gives a gentle curtsy, introducing herself as Fina Makaira. Ophinio introduces himself with a huff, annoyed that he has to keep company with young kids. As he approaches, Felix tells him they were playing with toys and invites him to join them. Ophinio clears his throat and confidently strides into the room. He sits on the floor, book in hand, and gives Fina and Felix a sidelong glance. The aide tries to intervene, but Kanitis stops him, stating the Emperor's orders are for the children to stay together until training. Jerk. Ophinio snatches Fina's book, declaring that he will read it to her. Felix proudly tells Ophinio that Fina can read, but she nervously denies it with a laugh. Ophinio brightens up and thanks her, while the confused Felix wonders why Fina just lied. Ophinio begins to read, but stutters, confirming for Fina that her father was right about his social awkwardness. Bump, she gently leans against him, thinking that despite his arrogance, his attempt to do something for her is cute. Sway, she suddenly notices he looks unwell and is starting to falter. As his head bobs with exhaustion, she feels a pang of pity, wondering how much his parents make him study. Fina muses that he might be nicer if he just got some sleep as he begins to doze off. Jolt. He snaps awake, and Fina is amused by the 4-year-old's attempt to act like a grown-up. Bam! A maid and Kanatis burst in, announcing it's time to go to the training grounds. Grip! Kanatis firmly grabs the aide, relaying the captain's order that only the Makaira children are to accompany the prince. Chills! He leans in and whispers threateningly, reminding the aide who is waiting at the training grounds. The defeated aide wobbles away as Kanatis leads the children down the hall. Kanatis nods to the maid, signaling for them to proceed. As the maid instructs them to change, Ophinio suddenly yanks Fina's hand, demanding her attention. Lurch Fina loses her balance and starts to fall, but Felix quickly grabs her. Thump, thump, her heart races as she thanks her brother for catching her. She smiles thankfully at Felix, while Ophinio glares at them from the side. While assuring Felix she's fine, Fina silently fumes that the rude rascal didn't even apologize. Bam! She's struck speechless by a sudden realization. Ophinio gets right in her face, and she realizes with horror that the punk just called her ugly. As a furious Ophinio turns away, Felix tries to placate a fuming Fina, promising to tell their father. The scene shifts to the training grounds where Caleb practices his swordsmanship while other knights watch. Now dressed for training, the children watch Caleb in awe as Kanatis tells them to stretch while they wait. While helping Fina with her stretches, Kanatis compliments her flexibility. Beam, she happily replies that it's nothing. She adds a shy, "Ah, well, that," with a happy little smile. Shock, Ophinio looks utterly stunned by her simple comment. In a moment of utter shock, Ophinio flashes back to Fina, pretending she couldn't read. Jump! He leaps to his feet, startling everyone by shouting, "What the heck, you?" Yell, Ophinio furiously accuses Fina of lying about not being able to read. A teary-eyed Ophinio looks betrayed, repeating that she tricked him. Pant, pant. Kanatis tries to calm the hysterical prince, who cries that lying is bad. Slap. Ophinio suddenly hits Fina on the back of the head. Both Felix and Kanatis cry out in alarm at the prince's action. Shriek, Ophinio unleashes a tantrum, calling Fina a liar and a dummy. The nearby knights gasp as he continues to yell about her lie. Fina stares back, shocked and flushed with embarrassment. Konaches continues to plead with the crying, panting prince to calm down, but he just keeps shouting that lying is bad. Shriek. Ophinio unleashes his tantrum, screaming that Fina is a liar, bad, and a dummy. Hurry! Felix runs in panic toward his father, calling out to him for help. Shout! Ophinio yells at a stunned Caleb that Fina is a liar he hates and storms off, refusing to train. Dash! Caleb rushes past a stunned Fina, quickly apologizing as he pursues the prince. As Caleb calls her name, smack. Fina furiously slaps Ophinio across the face, calling him a stupid brat. Dart. Fina glares with pure rage, her fury now completely unleashed. Roll. Fina tackles Ophinio and sends them both tumbling to the ground, shocking the crowd of knights. Chomp. Fina bites the panicked prince, who screams for her to stop. Chomp. She ignores his cries and continues biting him as he yells that he told her not to. The two children bicker and headbutt each other on the ground while the adults watch in stunned silence. In a grand room, Caleb bows deeply before a woman on a throne, offering his sincere apologies. Behind their father, Fina and Ophinio continue to growl and glare at each other. Snap, the Empress asks about his son, and Caleb confirms Konaches is bringing him. The Empress of the Drafarkuth Empire, Ielesta Statella Drafarkuth, smiles and notes that the children seem to have no injuries. Ophinio points out a scratch on his cheek, while Fina notes her nosebleed, both blaming the other. Ielesta surmises that Ophinio started the fight, but Fina hit him first, as the two children stick their tongues out at one another. Ielesta politely asks Caleb to excuse them for a moment. Grab. As her hand rests on her sword, Caleb gives a reassuring nod back towards the worried children. Caleb gives Fina a warm smile, telling her that everything will be fine. Creak. Caleb departs, leaving the children alone with the Empress. Ielesta looks down at the two children, calmly calling them troublemaking rascals. Shine, Ielesta summons a glowing staff, observing that they had a big fight. Kneeling down, she gently asks Fina if she can tell her why they fought. Fina looks down, flustered and unable to answer the question. Ielesta smiles knowingly, asking if they fought for no reason at all. Musing aloud, she notes how she expected them to tattle on each other and wonders about their strange relationship. Sigh. Ielesta decides a child's scuffle is no big deal since they now know not to fight, especially given the Makaira family's prestige. She thinks to herself that escalating the issue would only be playing into someone else's hands. A tearful Fina suddenly begs Ielesta not to punish her father. Clench. Fina takes full responsibility for the fight, insisting her father did nothing wrong. Ielesta coolly replies that if Fina cared so much, she should have simply endured the taunts. Fina is stunned as Ielesta explains punishing the captain over a kid's fight would make the imperial family a joke. Ielesta smiles, reassuring a wide-eyed Fina that her father will not be punished. Stagger, Fina lets out a huge sigh of relief. Hiccup, Fina gets the hiccups from crying so much to Ophinio's annoyance. Whoosh! Ielesta raises her staff, casting a spell to ease the pain of the two troublemakers. Drift. A dark mist seems to lift from the children's injuries as the healing magic takes effect. Fina presses her cheeks in amazement, exclaiming that the stinging is gone, even though the bruises remain. Ielesta gives Fina a gentle kiss on the forehead. Fina realizes that beneath the royal title, Ielesta was just a normal mother, apologizing for her son's behavior. Back at their manor, Monia waits anxiously for her family to return. Jump! Fina leaps into her mother's arms and bursts into tears while Monia asks what happened. While Monia comforts Fina, a remorseful Felix apologizes, but she reassures him and invites him for a hug too. Caleb apologizes to Monia, but she insists it wasn't his fault after reading the Empress's letter, and tells him to return to the palace. While tucked in bed, Felix tells his mother that Fina wasn't at fault, and that the prince started the argument. Tremble, Monia gently tends to a crying Fina's wounds, telling her to bear with the stinging. Monia comforts her daughter, asking why she's apologizing and telling her not to cry. Sobbing, Fina confesses she failed to maintain her etiquette, was a nuisance to her father, and even hit the prince. Fina wails that she's sorry and too ashamed to even lift her head. Ophinio peeks from a doorway, wondering if Monia was angry after seeing her speak with Caleb and Ielesta. Ielesta tells Ophinio that Caleb has returned to the palace after taking his children home. She explains Fina cried because she was hurt, but Ophinio points out that she used darkness magic on him. Alesta gently touches his cheek, clarifying that even oblivion magic can't erase the heart's pain. Throb. A wave of guilt or pain washes over Ophinio as he reflects on his mother's words. Alesta internally notes Ophinio's abnormal sensitivity lately, surprised he would ever hit someone. She worries the studies are too much for him, and laments trusting a woman who betrayed her. Flinch. Ophinio shivers in fear at the mere thought of the Empress Dowager. Alesta fumes internally, accusing the Empress Dowager of being willing to break the law to use Ophinio as a tool. Bending down to his level, Alesta gently asks her son how he's feeling. Alesta calmly surmises that he hit Fina because she did something he disliked, which led to their fight. She kindly asks him to share how he truly felt, but Ophinio remains silent. Ophinio finally confesses that he just wanted to be friends with Fina, but he was mean and now his chest hurts. He tearfully admits that thinking about her makes the pain in his heart even worse. Slap. Recalling the moment he hit her, Ophinio is overcome with remorse. Wailing, Ophinio breaks down completely, crying that he's sorry and was wrong. Pat. Alesta comforts him, saying it was a youthful mistake and he must apologize to Fina. Hiccuping through his tears, Ophinio worries Fina won't visit him anymore because he hurt her. Alesta reassures him with a smile, telling him that all he needs to do is go to her first. Ophinio looks up in teary-eyed surprise, questioning his mother's simple advice. The scene shifts to the Makaira Manor, where Fina narrates that a week has passed since the fight. Fina recalls both she and the prince sent apologies through her father, who still seemed worried. Till she looks at her reflection, noting with relief that her injuries have completely healed. Monia enters the room, playfully asking Fina why she's pouting. Fina asks if she's small, and Monia lovingly reassures her that she'll be tall when she grows up. A sweet illustration shows Fina standing with Monia, highlighting their resemblance. Monia notes the resemblance and admits she also fought often, specifically with Fina's uncle, Douglas. Fina tells her mother that the prince said he was sorry. Fina sheepishly admits she also apologized, prompting Monia to call her kind. Monia explains that even kind people fight, but Fina pouts, knowing she still shouldn't have hit the prince. Fina playfully tickles a baby, who squeals with delight. Zoom! Felix rushes in, telling Fina their mother's friend is arriving and they're going out together. As they descend the stairs, Fina wonders who this important friend could be. Wap, a butler, directs the staff to ensure everything is perfect for the arriving guest. The children question if the visitor is more important than their own family. Bow! The entire household staff lines the entrance, bowing in unison for the guest's arrival. The tense atmosphere makes Fina wonder who could warrant such a grand spectacle. Monia announces the guest's arrival as the children look on with nervous anticipation. The butler reaches out and gently takes the hand of the arriving visitor. He helps a woman in an elegant green dress step out of a royal carriage. The woman greets the butler as Albert, who welcomes Her Highness into the manor. Flinch. Fina recognizes the voice with a gasp of shock. The guest instructs Albert to have presents from another carriage brought to the living room. Monia greets the guest formally as Your Majesty. Hug. The guest warmly embraces Monia, calling her by name. The guest coos over the adorable children, leaving Fina stammering in utter shock. Fina realizes with a jolt that her mother is friends with the Empress. Alesta turns slightly, inviting someone else to come forward and greet them. A small, shy Ophinio peeks out from behind her skirts and offers a hesitant greeting. Stiff, Fina freezes in horror, realizing the prince is here as well. Later, in the sitting room, Alesta tells Monia that it was good of the Emperor to send her. Alesta tells Monia they left the palace unannounced, mentioning her fight with the Empress Dowager. Monia asks about the Empress Dowager claiming to be framed, but Alesta scoffs, knowing she was trying to ruin Ophinio. Alesta reveals the Empress Dowager deceived her, replaced Ophinio's guards, and had an attendant threaten him. Vowing never to forgive her, Alesta expresses her fury while Monia admits she never thought a grandmother would harm her own grandson. Monia remarks on the Emperor's devastation, and Alesta agrees, noting the trouble it caused Ophinio. Alesta angrily blames the Emperor for trusting his mother, recalling how he treated her like an enemy for opposing his desire to kill the Empress Dowager. The scene shifts to Ophinio and Fina, standing apart from each other in the garden, viewed from inside. Outside among falling petals, the two children face each other in silent tension. Ophinio looks down, hesitating to speak. Fina internally debates apologizing first considering herself the more mature one, as Aphenio fidgets nervously. As Aphenio hesitantly tries to speak, Fina decides to let him go first, recognizing his effort. Fina reflects on her own childish actions during their fight, questioning if she can truly call herself mature. She realizes with regret that her own arrogance and thoughtless pride had angered him. Flutter Aphenio finally apologizes for getting angry and for hitting Fina. He also admits he was wrong to pretend he couldn't read, but Fina accepts the blame for that and apologizes for hurting his feelings. Aphenio timidly asks if she hates him now. Fina asks if he hates her for headbutting him, and Aphenio quickly shakes his head, no. A blushing Aphenio quietly confirms that he doesn't hate her either. With the apologies exchanged, they both break into relieved, joyful smiles. Now friends again, Fina and Ohino walk back inside, happily holding hands. Alesta and Monia watch the children return, praising them for making up. Step, step. Felix arrives as Fina and Aphenio giggle together. Kaya. The baby brother lets out a happy squeal upon seeing Felix. Alesta teases that Fina is so adorable it will be hard for her to get married, prompting Monia to jokingly tell her to back off. Aphenio crouches to play with the baby, asking for his name. Fina proudly introduces her younger brother Florence and asks Aphenio if he thinks he's cute. Thud. Florence lets out a piercing scream, sending a terrified Aphenio falling backward in shock. Fina reassures a dizzy Aphenio that Florence is just shy, as the baby wonders if the prince dislikes him. Jump. Aphenio suddenly gets an idea, excitedly suggesting they go explore the estate, to Fina's delight. Fina eagerly leads the way, telling Aphenio to follow as Felix trails behind holding Florence. The day ends as night falls over the grand Makira manor. Tucked into bed by his mother, a happy Aphenio recounts his day playing with Fina and Felix in the garden and learning to climb trees. He fondly recalls how they got scolded by a gardener and then took a nap together. Gazing at the ceiling, Aphenio remembers Fina telling him she loves writing in her notebooks most of all. Alesta smiles, noticing her son talks only of Fina and has clearly grown fond of her. Roll. Aphenio's joy turns to sadness as he tearfully asks if he must return to his studies at the palace. Throb. A wave of dark, painful emotion pulses through the scene. Drifting off to sleep, Aphenio murmurs happily for his mother and for Fina. He dreams of Fina's bright smile, thinking how pretty she is. Throb. The dark feeling intrudes once more. Watching her son sleep, a determined Alesta silently vows that he won't have to endure those studies anymore. Clang, fully armored, Caleb announces his departure. Flinch! He's surprised to see Alesta and a sleepy Aphenio waving him goodbye. Monia informs a surprised Fina that the Empress and the Prince will be staying with them for a while. Felix asks Fina about her trip to the Aflor Company, and she cheekily reminds him he can't come due to his classes. As Felix pouts, a maid arrives to get Fina ready, and she dashes off excitedly. Fina looks back at her sulking brother and promises to bring him a present. Grab. Felix suddenly stops Aphenio, grabbing his arm with a serious expression. A gloomy Felix asks a confused Aphenio to please look after his unruly sister. Cross. The two boys make a pinky promise, sealing their new bond. Alesta and Monia watch from a distance as Felix and Aphenio interact, with Alesta sighing about how cute they are. The scene transitions to the grand exterior of the Iflor Company building. An excited Aphenio tells his mother this is his first time visiting the square, and Alesta chuckles fondly. Turn. Two attendants welcome the unexpected customer, politely informing them that the store isn't open yet. Alesta smiles, asking one of the men if he's been well since they last saw each other. Gulp. The attendant panics, realizing he nearly caused a huge problem by almost addressing her as Your Majesty. Alesta teases that she succeeded in scaring him while he complains that she should have given him a heads up before arriving. Whisper, he leans in to ask if she ran away, if the Emperor knows, and if it's safe for her to be out. Alesta asks Aphenio if he thinks the place is cool, and he agrees, amazed by all the interesting things. She tells Aphenio and Fina they can each choose one item, but warns them not to go outside, lest Mr. Horseman catch them. A text box identifies a man as Mr. Horseman, a knight in disguise, and Fina notes he's not trying very hard to hide his identity. Fina waves happily at the knight, thinking to herself that although he looks scary, he's actually a kind person. Whoa. Aphenio and Fina gaze in awe at a warehouse filled with countless fascinating items and gifts. Ophenio asks Fina what she's going to choose, and she immediately decides on a notebook. Confused, Ophenio questions her choice, and Fina explains that she loves doodling and writing notes. Fina recalls her past life, where she began writing to combat boredom, reminiscing about magic and treasured memories with friends. She remembers writing dramatic stories about revenge, betrayal, and romance, complete with slapping scenes and love triangles. Giggling to herself, Fina admits her writing also included some smut novels, much to Ophenio's complete confusion. Ophenio asks if she means the doodles in her books, and she confirms they're written in her own secret language. Fina internally feels bad for calling her writing doodles, since it's actually Korean. She offers to teach Ophenio her secret language, promising it's easy, on the condition that it remains a secret just between them. Verbatim, Ophenio's heart pounds, and he blushes as he repeats her words. Only us? Grab! A determined Ophenio suddenly grabs a massive stack of notebooks, leaving Fina shocked at the sheer quantity. As Fina giggles, Ophenio explains that his mother told him off for wanting 10 notebooks because it was too many. Ophenio gets his mother's attention, pointing out that several ornate carriages have just arrived outside. Alesta closes her eyes with a sigh, noting that he arrived much faster than she had anticipated. Bam! Fina runs happily through a grand room, calling out for her father. Fina screeches to a halt, shocked to see her father, Caleb, with his arms wide open. But another man is also present. A stern man with red hair and eyes, wearing a formal military uniform, sits impassively in an ornate chair. Tap. Monia gently scolds Fina for being a naughty thing, as a completely ignored Caleb stands in the background. Ahem Caleb clears his throat in an attempt to get noticed, while the red-haired man smirks and chuckles quietly. Alesta stands opposite the seated red-haired man, her expression tense and serious. Looking nervous, Monia gently suggests that Ophenio and Fina should go play upstairs. Fina looks up curiously at her mother and asks who the mysterious person is. Monia smiles faintly and explains that he is His Imperial Majesty the Emperor. Both Fina and Ophenio are completely thunderstruck by the revelation. Scribble. Later, Fina and Ophenio lie on the floor of a bedroom, quietly drawing together. As they draw, Fina asks Ophenio why the Emperor came, wondering if he's there to take him back to the palace. Sink. Ophenio's mood plummets, and his head slumps onto the paper in front of him. He quietly admits he doesn't want to go back, wishing he could stay with her and Felix instead. He laments that returning to the palace means being all by himself again in a vast, lonely room. Seeing his teary eyes, Fina reassures the sad prince that she and Felix will visit him often. Jump. Ophenio's spirits lift as he eagerly asks if she really promises to visit, knowing deep down that he has to go back. Fiona gives him a bright, reassuring smile, thinking to herself that he's a truly kind and smart child. Downstairs, the Emperor calmly sips his tea while Caleb stands guard behind his chair. The Emperor looks up with a slight smile and says Alesta's name. With a confident grin, he tells her that he has come to take her back. The Emperor says they should stop bothering the Makiras, but Alesta retorts that he's the one causing a bother by interrupting her visit with a friend. The Emperor casually mentions the Empress Dowager sends her apologies, but Alesta immediately calls it a lie, which he calmly affirms is true. Alesta exasperatedly asks Elios if he's kidding, as Caleb internally questions why the royal couple is having a lover's quarrel in his house. Elios cheekily tells Alesta he's gone crazy because she wasn't home, causing her to blush in flustered denial. He continues, declaring he can't sleep at night without her, but she dismisses his unbelievable claims while fanning herself furiously. Elios admits there being a bother, and mentions he heard Ophenio apologize for hitting Fina. Standing with Felix, Monia addresses Elios, explaining that her daughter was also at fault in the fight. A smiling Elios asks if he can meet the young lady they're discussing. Step, as the group walks, Elios thinks he'll finally see the young lady Caleb always mentioned, and Caleb apologizes for her behavior. Elios peeks into a room to find Ophenio and Fina lying on the floor, quietly drawing together. Chatter. The two children are shown happily enjoying each other's company while they draw. Elios remarks that Fina looks just like Monia, while Alesta finds it hard to believe such a cute child headbutted Ophenio. With a smirk, Elios agrees Fina is certainly something, while Felix is seen playfully chasing her in the background with an eek. Alesta smiles, observing that Elios also seems to have taken a liking to the young lady. Knock knock. Elios knocks on the doorframe, formally calling for Lady Fina. Bolt, A startled Fina shoots up in shock, realizing the Emperor has arrived. A nervous Fina timidly answers the Emperor's call. Elios calls out to Ophinio, dramatically telling his son that he missed him so much he thought he would die. Ophinio excitedly runs to his father with open arms, yelling, "Father, hug!" Elios embraces his son, telling him how bored he was, and Ophinio replies that he's been having fun. While holding Ophinio, Elios turns his attention to a very nervous Fina. Lift, Fina performs a graceful curtsy and introduces herself as Fina Makaira. Reach, Elios kneels to her level with a smile, extending his hand as Fina thinks he's handsome, but not as much as her dad. Fina stares in confusion at the Emperor's offered hand. Flinch Alesta leans in and whispers something in Fina's ear, making her jump. Elios gently kisses Fina's hand, thanking her for being a friend to Ophinio, as he looks at her with a kind expression. Thump. Fina's heart pounds in a panic over the interaction, as the Emperor invites her to visit them at the palace. Alesta and Ophinio stand beside their carriage, ready to depart. A sad Ophinio looks around, disappointed that Fina and Felix aren't there to say goodbye. Alesta gently encourages Ophinio to say his farewells, and he politely thanks everyone for their hospitality. Ophinio fondly recalls playing with Fina and Felix, promising to repay their kindness when they visit the palace. As Caleb helps Ophinio into the carriage, a voice shouts for His Highness to wait. Felix and Fina rush forward, each holding a farewell gift. Felix tearfully gives Ophinio his favorite toy horse, suggesting they play together next time, as an impatient Fina urges him to hurry. Interrupt. Fina eagerly cuts in, presenting her own gift to Ophinio. Ta-da! She proudly holds out two simple, well-loved books. A tearful Fina explains to a stunned Ophinio that it's a good story she wrote herself, even though the book is worn. Overcome with emotion, Ophinio realizes they gave him their most precious belongings, so he wouldn't be lonely. While Ophinio breaks down in tears, promising to treasure their gifts, as even Felix wipes away a tear. Alesta comforts the crying Ophinio and asks Elios if he looks forward to their future, to which he agrees. Snooze. Ophion sleeps peacefully in his mother's lap, and Alesta remarks that he seems poised to learn a lot. Pat, pat. Elios sits beside them, gently stroking his sleeping son's head. Elios looks down at his sleeping son with a soft, loving expression. Hold! Elios now has the book Fina gave to Ophinio in his hands. Flip, he opens the book, commenting on what an interesting child Fina is, before his eyes widen in surprise at the contents. Grab Alesta playfully takes the book from him, eager to read the cute story herself. Stunned, Elios remarks on the outstanding drawing, profound message, and adult-like writing, finding it impossible for a 4-year-old. Smirk, Elios leans back confidently, declaring that Ophinio must take after him for having such a great judge of character. Alesta dryly asks who that comment was for, and he smoothly replies that it was for her. Alesta turns away flustered, muttering about his mouth, as Elios beams with a triumphant smile. Realization dawns on Alesta as she remembers something important she forgot to ask Fina. Coo, creak, night falls over the quiet Makaira estate. Felix cheerfully asks his mother if he can ride with her, and she agrees as a startled Fina looks on. Floatmonia uses her magical staff, lifting a delighted Felix into the air. Whoosh, Fina gazes up in absolute wonder as her brother flies through the sky on the magical staff. Whoa, Felix joyfully calls out to Fina, Caleb, and a baby named Florence from high in the air. Beaming with excitement, Felix recalls how high he flew, feeling the sun right above them. Fina's eyes sparkle with excitement as she thinks how much fun flying must be. Monia sighs in thought, wondering if her method of showing how fun flying is isn't working to convince Fina. Tremble. Despite her excitement, Fina is visibly shaking with a mix of fear and anticipation. Jump! Overcome with desire, Fina throws a tantrum on the blanket, demanding just one turn on the staff. Defeated, Fina collapses face first onto a pillow, her energy spent. Caleb laughingly tells Fina that she's already done 5 laps and it's time to get off now. Grumble Fina buries her face in a stuffed rabbit, completely mortified by her earlier outburst. Riding happily with her mother, Fina's initial fear has quickly transformed into joyful curiosity. Monia explains a core principle. One learns magic to prevent harming themselves or others. She looks upon her daughter with a warm and encouraging smile. Looking at her loving family, Fina feels a wave of gratitude, thinking how precious they all are to her. Monia turns to her daughter, gently asking what she needs. Hesitantly, Fina stands in the library and asks her mother if she might borrow a book. Monia notes she's read all the storybooks, but Fina shyly clarifies that she wants a different kind. Fina specifies that she wants a book on magic, particularly one that teaches the spells for contracting a spirit. Monia's face lights up with pure joy, realizing her daughter has finally decided to learn magic. Monia excitedly offers to teach Fina herself, though Fina worries about taking her away from her work. Two maids express their shared delight, exclaiming how wonderful it is that Lady Fina has finally made up her mind. Snooze. That night, Fina sleeps soundly in her bed, cuddling her stuffed rabbit. Whoosh! 5 years pass, and a man with green hair smiles, observing a room full of spells and noting how hard she has worked. Swoosh! A woman with white hair materializes like water as a gentle tap sounds nearby. Rumble. A scarred warrior declares that it's finally happening this spring, and his expectations are high. Spark. A single flame magically leaps from a lantern with purpose. Blaze. The flame becomes a woman who reveals another Machaira descendant is forming a contract with her, the Phoenix Ignis. Shine. A blonde spirit glides toward the sleeping Fina's bed as the others watch intently. The spirit looks down at the sleeping child, identifying her as Fina Machaira, while a dark shadow looms over them. Fina is revealed to be the child blessed by the golden dragon, as a distant rumble echoes outside a shattered window. Leaning close, the spirit tells the sleeping Fina that she must overcome the hardship that awaits her. The assembled spirits and the warrior look on with solemn expressions, aware of the path that lies ahead. Whoosh! In a flash of light, the spirits vanish, leaving the room quiet and still once more. Snip! The scene shifts to a peaceful garden where a young man carefully harvests a large, red fruit. A ritual is explained as Fina's hair is braided with symbolic strings, red for courage, blue for wisdom, and so on. Monia helps her stand, completing the lesson. White symbolizes hope, and black symbolizes equality before God. Dressed in a formal black cloak, Fina is guided by her mother toward a mirror. Seeing her daughter's reflection, Monia thinks proudly that her little girl is already old enough to learn magic. Hug. Overwhelmed with emotion, Fina turns and embraces her mother tightly. As Fina departs by carriage, she promises her brother she'll be back soon, while the narration recalls her father's heroic legacy. Clip clop. Gazing out the carriage window, Fina sincerely hopes that by learning magic, she'll never hurt anyone again. The grand carriage continues its steady journey toward her important destination. Finally, they arrive at a magnificent columned building where crowds of people have already gathered on the steps. Halt. The carriage, marked with the noble crest of a sword and serpent, stops before the grand entrance. Open. As the doors swing wide, the waiting crowd gasps in unison, their eyes fixed on the entrance. The crowd murmurs, recognizing the Machaira family's dragon crest as Fina steps out, feeling self-conscious under everyone's stare. As they walk up the steps, her father asks what kind of spirit she wishes to contract, and Fina excitedly replies that any would be amazing. They enter a vast, open-roofed chamber lined with ancient pillars, the sacred site of the spirit contracting ceremony. Whoa. Fina looks up in awe at the massive, open-roofed chamber she's entered with Caleb and Monia. Fina spots a stone carving of a dragon, thinking it looks just like Kurosawa and wondering how he's doing. Looking at another carving of angelic figures, she wonders if the Spirit Kings really look like that and thinks they're so cool. Fina muses that they'd be even cooler in person, feeling envious of the 5 heroes, as a priest offers blessings to Caleb and Monia. She recognizes the priest, remembering that he came to their home after her magic went berserk. The priest greets Fina with a formal blessing, and she performs a perfect curtsy in return. Monia kisses Fina's forehead, wishing her good luck, while a teary-eyed Caleb thinks with pride that their daughter has grown up. The priest calls for Lady Fina to come forward, as, in the background, Caleb asks a flustered Monia if she is crying. Fina follows the priest toward a central dais, where 2 other children are already waiting. Fina nervously approaches the other 2 children, offering a shy, "Hi." The priest addresses the 3 of them, explaining they were born on the same day and that divine beings will be watching their ceremony. He details the complex divine hierarchy, prompting one of the other children to silently question the point of explaining it to 5-year-olds. Narration reveals that the Almighty God is said to watch over the temple through its open roof. The narration continues, identifying the central stone as Atito Or, a gift from the golden dragon, as a child wonders if it's true. A priestess joins the priest, congratulating the 3 children on their 5th birthday and offering a blessing. A girl with reddish-brown hair takes her first steps toward the ceremonial stone. She looks back nervously as someone wishes her good luck. The priest instructs her to kneel, close her eyes, and recite the spell to summon the spirits. Fina watches as 6 colored lights shine down upon the stone. Thump, thump! The girl's heart pounds with excitement as she stands up, wondering if her spell worked. The colored lights begin to fade away one by one. Fina smiles brightly, realizing only the yellow light remains, meaning an earth spirit has responded, and thinks magic is fun. The priest instructs the girl, Miss Trinia, to place a hand on her heart as he announces she has contracted a lesser earth spirit, an earthworm. Trinia runs to her parents for a congratulatory hug, while Fina watches on. The priest turns his attention to Fina, calling her forward for her turn. Thump. Fina's heart pounds in her chest with nervous anticipation. Point! The priest gestures again, repeating his instruction for her to head to the stone. Phew. Fina lets out a shaky breath to steady herself as her parents watch anxiously from the side. Caleb and Monia share a worried look, their faces tense with concern for their daughter. Fina walks barefoot onto the large, glowing magic circle inscribed on the stone platform. The priest gives her a signal to begin, and she responds with a determined nod. Standing in the center of the circle, Fina begins her prayer to the heavenly god, the golden dragon, and the 6 spirit kings. As she continues the incantation, she notes that the feeling is strangely similar to her time in Atito. 6 brilliant beams of colored light descend from the heavens, surrounding Fina. BOH. The light radiates with such intensity that Caleb and Monia have to shield their eyes. The pillar of light shoots high into the sky, visible to all the people in the town below. Swoosh! Suddenly, Fina finds herself transported from the temple to a quiet, sun-dappled forest. Looking around confused, she realizes she's where Kirisoth lives and wonders if he was the one who summoned her. She gets frustrated, questioning why she was summoned to the middle of the forest and not by the lake. Seriously, she wriggles around on a large rock in annoyance. Panting with frustration, she catches her breath. She slips and tumbles awkwardly off the rock, landing with an ouch. Throwing a tantrum, Fina complains that summoning a child to such uneven terrain is completely inconsiderate. Blaze, a voice, muses about her temper as a wisp of flame appears nearby. Spark the flame materializes into Ignis, who kneels with a confident smirk. Ignis tells Fina that she's been waiting for her, leaving the girl completely surprised. Jump Ignis smiles and formally greets Fina Makairo by name. Fina cautiously asks who she is, and Ignis playfully asks back who she thinks she is. Ignis bursts into laughter, amused that Fina was preparing to fight with her tiny fists, but Fina thinks it's better than nothing. Ignis urges Fina to hurry, pointing ahead as Fina asks if she knows Kirisoth too. With a confident smile, Ignis replies that she knows him much better than Fina does. Lift Ignis easily picks Fina up, noting her lack of resemblance to Makairo, which confuses the little girl. Dismissing the thought, Ignis tells Fina to hold on tight before they make a big jump. Whoosh! They rocket into the air, and Fina lets out a terrified shriek. Jump! Soaring high above the treetops, Fina continues to scream. They float gently over the forest canopy. Held securely, Fina marvels at how high they are and how impressive this magic is. Zoom! They zip through the sky as Fina yells with a mix of fear and exhilaration. Twirl Ignis playfully flips them upside down in mid-air. Ignis lands, smiling down at Fina and remarking how she's truly acting like a 5-year-old. Blaze. They arrive at a lakeside where Ignis gently kneels down. Tug. Ignis playfully pulls on one of Fina's hair ribbons, asking to take it, but Fina protests that she needs it for her contract. Ignis smirks, confirming that's exactly why she wants it. As her ceremonial ribbons loosen, Fina asks why she was brought here. Shake. Tears welling in her eyes, Fina trembles and asks in horror if she died again. An ancient scene depicts 5 human heroes meeting the towering spirit kings to forge their first contract. Narration explains that the ceremonial stone is now used for children's contracts, as Kirisoth watches over a tiny, distant Fina. Rumble Kirisoth reassures Fina, explaining he's been waiting for her 5th birthday so she can form her contract in Atito. Fina looks up, completely stunned by the revelation. She looks up to see Ignis waving beside the 4 other spirits she's seen before. A voice tells Fina to look behind her, where the silhouettes of the 5 spirits stand. A chart displays the symbols of the spirit kings, whose elements combine to form Mother Nature. A flashback illustrates the founding myth where the Spirit Kings first appeared and contracted with the 5 heroes. Sweat. A nervous Fina wonders why such great and powerful spirits would want to form a contract with her. The man with green hair smiles, calling her confused expression cute and revealing she's already formed a pseudo-contract with them. Huh. Fina spots her green ribbon in his hand and indignantly claims it's hers. He teases that he'll be sad if only Felix gets a ribbon and decides it's time for a proper introduction. Whoosh! A ribbon of green light elegantly wraps around Fina. He introduces himself as the guardian of culture and the arts, adding that he loved the fairy tale she wrote. Shocked, Fina asks how he knew about her story, and he smugly replies that he knows everything. Slam! Ignis suddenly tackles the man, angrily shouting at him not to flirt with a child. Fina turns to Ignis, hesitantly asking if she is also a Spirit King. Blaze Ignis proudly summons a flame, identifying herself as Phoenix, the Spirit King of Fire and Guardian of War, tied to the Makaira family. Rumble, the scarred warrior, introduces himself as Orad, the Spirit King of the Earth, though Fina thinks he looks more suited to be the Guardian of War. A man with white hair speaks, saying he wanted to greet her first while recalling an argument between Phoenix and the green-haired man over Fina. The white-haired spirit offers a gentle smile, formally introducing himself to Fina. Fina has a sudden realization, connecting her mother's water magic and beauty to her ability to contract a water spirit. Fina watches from behind, utterly bewildered, as the Spirit Kings begin to argue amongst themselves. Phoenix insists on taking care of Fina as a Makaira, but the green-haired man asks why she ignored Felix, another Makaira. The green-haired man shrugs nonchalantly, claiming it's only natural he knows about her fairy tale as the guardian of the arts. Whack! Phoenix smacks him again, accusing him of planning to hit on Fina. As Phoenix and the green-haired man square off, Oread sternly tells them to calm down and listen. Oread declares seriously that Fina belongs to no one, and since she's precious to all, everyone has an equal right to pursue her. A blonde spirit points out that while they were arguing, Fina disappeared. Peeking from behind Kurasat's leg, Fina asks if those chaotic people are really the Spirit Kings, and he explains they're just excited to meet her. Fina questions why she must form a contract with them, feeling untalented with only a simple prayer spell to her name. Tearing up, she asks if this is happening because she received his blessings, recalling his promise to bring her happiness. Flinch Kurasat clarifies that she accepted the Spirit King's protection even before his, a fact that shocks Fina. He explains that after her soul's arrival, the Spirit King of Darkness embraced and protected her to prevent the shock of awakening. Move. A deer's silhouette appears before Kurasat's massive eye as he explains the Spirit King of Darkness's role to a stunned Fina. The narration reveals Fina's soul was not meant for this world, and its strong foreign magic drew the protection of the Spirit Kings. Fina stands barefoot and bewildered, trying to process the monumental revelation about her soul's origin. She argues that only imperial families can contract with light and darkness spirits, and she doesn't have royal blood. A blonde woman in white robes appears, agreeing that only the imperial family can form such contracts. The woman smiles, telling a confused Fina that despite not being royal, she possesses the necessary qualifications. Gasped Fina jumps to a wild conclusion, wondering if this means she's destined to lead a revolution when she grows up. Fina imagines herself as a king from a famous movie, but the blonde woman dismisses her theatrical fantasy, clarifying that's not what she meant. Taking her hand, the woman leads Fina toward a tranquil pool of water. Shine as Fina prays to the golden dragon, brilliant beams of light descend, signifying the spirit's response. The narration announces that the Spirit King of Light, Ignis, has accepted the child's prayers. Phoenix, the Spirit King of Fire, appears and also accepts Fina's prayer. The Spirit King of Water, Naiad, is revealed, and he too accepts the prayer. Oread, the Spirit King of the Earth, smiles and accepts the prayer from Fina. The Spirit King of the Wind, Ariel, cheerfully accepts the child's prayer. Rise, a shadowy form begins to ascend from the ground. Swoosh! A hooded figure emerges from the darkness. Woke! The Spirit King of Darkness reveals himself, a man with antler-like shadows behind his hood. Swoosh Fina is enveloped by the colorful essences of the 6 Spirit Kings, formalizing their contract. From high in the sky, Kurasat watches over the ceremony with a gentle expression. Fina whimpers, having suddenly returned to the temple, and panics over what excuse she can give for her disappearance. She nervously thinks about how she's back in the temple and needs a believable story. From the side, Caleb and Monia watch their daughter with looks of deep concern. Fina realizes she can't possibly tell anyone the truth about where she just was. A flustered priestess stammers her congratulations to Miss Fina. The priestess announces that Fina has contracted with Nyx, a lesser water spirit, and Sylphide, a lesser wind spirit. What Fina is shocked as her parents rush to her side, telling her she was awesome and finally made a contract. Monia tells Caleb the Pillar of Light proved her theory about Fina's talent, happily recalling she made the same contracts at that age. Confused, Fina realizes she actually contracted all 6 Spirit Kings, and suspects Curasoth arranged a cover-up. Seeing her parents' happy faces, she understands that no one knows she was taken to a Tito. Flinch Caleb notices her hair ribbons are gone, and asks what happened to them. Sweat. He then points out her torn clothes, and Fina gasps in alarm. Monia laughs warmly, reassuring Fina that it's a good sign, meaning the spirits liked her. She explains that playful spirits sometimes steal trinkets from contractors they favor, just as they stole her blue string when she was young. Clip-clop. The family's carriage waits for them, outside the grand temple arches. Jump Fina leaps out of the carriage into the arms of a boy who calls her name. She happily greets her brother. Hug. Her brother Felix embraces her and asks about her contract, and they compare the spirits they each command. Felix congratulates his sister on her success, and she smiles, thanking him for his kindness. Monia instructs an attendant to prepare a change of clothes for Fina. With a playful wink, Monia asks Felix if she can borrow Fina for a while. The family shares a light-hearted moment as Monia urges Fina to change quickly while Felix teases her to go slowly. While tying Fina's hair, Monia reflects on her daughter turning 5 and successfully forming her first contract. Monia hugs her daughter, calling Fina her precious treasure and remembering how lovely she was even as a difficult baby. Kiss. Fina turns and gives her mother an affectionate kiss on the cheek. Beaming with joy, Fina tells Monia that she likes her a lot too. Monia smiles, her heart warmed by her daughter's sweet declaration. Monia asks if Fina will live with her forever, prompting Fina to silently recall her dateless past life and her desire to get married. Monia smiles warmly, telling Fina to live freely and do whatever she wants before getting married. Pat. While patting her hair, Monia adds one piece of advice. Don't marry a soldier. Trot. Fina cheerfully runs down the grand staircase, her mother following closely behind. Rustle. Fina opens a large, ornate chest, wondering aloud what treasure she should put inside it. She smiles softly, filled with gratitude as she thinks about how good her new life is. Looking over her precious belongings, she reflects that her treasure box is already full after just 5 years, making her sad past life feel far away. Resting her head on the box, Fina peacefully accepts that her memories of a past life in Korea are no longer so painful. The family's silhouettes stand together, watching as a guest carriage departs down the long road. A blond boy in a red cape looks disappointed as an attendant tells him it is time for His Highness to leave. Fina hugs Felix tightly as Felix promises the Highness they can play again next time. The Highness flushes with emotion as his attendant insists that they must go now. Rattle. Monia and Felix look on as Fina happily waves goodbye to the departing carriage. Rattle. The carriage continues down the road, leaving the family standing by their estate's gates. Fina looks up at the sky, sadly noting how quiet and lonely it feels now that everyone has left. Monia gently pats Fina's head, reassuring her that everything will be fine soon. When Monia asks about some wrappers, Fina proudly declares that she kept every single one because they were too pretty to throw away. As the family walks back toward their home, Fina trails behind, lost in thought. She stops and looks back towards the gate, feeling certain that she sensed a presence there. The narration identifies the neighboring mansion as the residence of Duke Veracitas, the Chancellor. Fina recalls from her magic lessons that the hero Veracitas once formed a contract with Oried, the Spirit King of the Earth. A narrator explains that for generations, the Makira family has held the esteemed position of Captain of the Imperial Guards. Similarly, the Veracitas family has traditionally been appointed as Chancellors of the Empire. Fina's eyes widen as she suddenly makes a connection, thinking back to a tea party her mother once held. In a memory, a blonde woman tells Monia that her daughter Lola is the same age as Fina and hopes they become friends. Looking toward the neighboring mansion, Fina recalls the woman mentioning her daughter, Lola. The memory of the tea party conversation strikes her with sudden clarity. The woman's kind words from the flashback echo in her mind, hoping Fina and Lola would get along. Snooze. In a different room, a small blonde baby sleeps peacefully in a crib. Fina approaches Monia in the nursery, calling out to her mother to ask a question. tilt. She asks about Lola, who lives across from them, wondering what Lolacio is like as a person. Monia thoughtfully recalls that Lolacio was born just 1 week before Fina. Fina notes her mother's hesitant tone, comparing it to how the difficult prince acted last year. Smiling, Monia adds that Lolacio is a very determined child with strong personal beliefs. Fina says goodnight to her mother, who wishes her sweet dreams in return. She walks down the long, quiet hallway by herself. Gazing out the window, Fina privately interprets strong beliefs as stubbornness and wonders if the girl is a spoiled brat. Tap. Felix suddenly pops into the window, shouting and scaring Fina, who cries out his name in shock. Fina tells him about the child her age in the mansion next door. Felix confirms he knows her and is friends with her older brother. He happily adds that the older brother, Lloyd, is smart, cool, and 2 years older than him. Tucked into bed by a maid, Fina thinks about her new neighbor and hopes they can become friends. She reflects on her amazing day, winking happily before drifting off. As she falls asleep, she thinks it would be a shame for such a wonderful day to simply end. She closes her eyes, finally succumbing to sleep. Fina is jolted awake by her teddy bear, who tells her the night is just getting started. Sway, the teddy bear begins to dance, inviting her to join it on such a beautiful night. Jolt. The bear makes a crass remark about her parents, and a furious voice roars from off-screen, cursing at him. Whirl. A ribbon of green light violently wraps around the teddy bear, flinging it away as Fina yelps. Glow. Ignis appears, apologizing for the scare, and Fina recognizes her with a start. From the side, Oried and Naiad watch the scene unfold, commenting that they knew he would get beaten up. Shake! Phoenix appears, embarrassed, and apologizes for Ariel's behavior, while he glares from the background. Guard Fina hides behind her teddy bear, nervously asking why all the spirits are in her room. Naiad smiles gently, explaining that since they formed a contract, they want to get to know her better. Fina puffs out her cheeks, protesting that she's at a sensitive age, but he responds with a gentle, "Oh dearie." As Fina looks on, Phoenix and Ariel bicker loudly, with Phoenix blaming Ariel for ruining his good impression, and Ariel retorting that Phoenix was the one overly excited about a Machaira descendant. Pop Ariel appears next to Fina, criticizing her calm reaction to contracting with 6 Spirit Kings, and explaining they've waited 5 years just for her. Oreed and Ignis add that it has been nearly 1,000 years since their last human contract, and they are eager to learn about Fina's past life. Clutching her bear, Fina looks completely overwhelmed by their sudden appearance and intense curiosity. Float Ariel magically summons a book that hovers in the air. Flutter. The glowing book floats down and opens its pages right in front of a curious Fina. Ariel and Oreed lean in, eagerly asking Fina what the book contains. Drop. The scene shifts to a memory of 2 young boys watching a tower of wooden blocks topple over. In the flashback, Fina calmly explains that the game they were playing is called Jenga. Back in the present, an exhausted Fina complains about being scolded for dozing off at breakfast, blaming the Spirit Kings for keeping her up. Slamahan confidently places a block on the Jenga tower, declaring the task a piece of cake. Swirl Ariel uses his wind magic to precisely handle the blocks, warning Phoenix not to burn them. Flare! Phoenix retorts that she won't burn the blocks, while Naiad uses her water magic to give them a smooth, protective coating. Fina explains the game's simple rules to a blonde boy, telling him he'll understand the fun once he tries it. Shake. As the tower wobbles, she explains that the player who makes it topple loses the game. The boy seems unconvinced, but Fina grins mischievously, telling him not to knock it till he's tried it. His interest is piqued as a small panel reveals Fina with a devilish look. Fina lays out the rules, 1 hand only, and no shaking the other person, as the boy eagerly begins to play. After successfully removing a block, the boy asks if there are any other rules, a wide smile on his face. Tap, tap, tap. Now completely absorbed, the boy admits the game is incredibly fun and asks where she got it, as Fina proudly claims she invented it herself. He asks in shock if she really made it, prompting Fina to nervously backtrack and say it was a gift. Fina tries to get the rowdy spirits to go to bed, scolding them for their enthusiasm and revealing she had to stop them from making a Jenga set out of gems. In the neighboring mansion, a man in a red cape and a woman watch the children play, with him remarking on how cute they are. He whispers to her that he wants to play together like that, and she promises they will after he finishes work. The couple stands before the children, announcing that their father is now leaving for work. Fina joins the 2 boys in cheerfully waving goodbye to their father. Monia smiles and calls for Fina to come over for a moment. Monia reminds Fina that her new spirit contract means she's now officially recognized as a member of the Draforkuth Kingdom. With a proud smile, Monia announces that Fina can now officially begin her studies. Shocked Fina freezes in horror, realizing the dreaded moment of starting school has finally arrived. An illustration depicts a studious Fina in a blue dress peering through a magnifying glass. Monia happily tells Fina that lessons will begin next week and promises to find her a wonderful teacher. Sweep, sweep. Two servants clean the area around the estate's large, ornate gates. Fina runs out and joyfully hugs a green-haired maid, calling out, "Martina." Ta-da! Spreading her arms wide, Fina proudly announces that this is her very first solo outing. Martina giggles at Fina's adorable declaration and congratulates her. Spin. As Fina twirls around her, Martina reminds her not to stray too far, and Fina promises to stay close. Martina's demeanor suddenly shifts, and she stands rigidly with a serious expression. Fina peeks out from some bushes. Looking towards the stern-faced Martina, Fina asks if Martina just used magic, and she calmly confirms it was earth-binding magic. Martina holds up a small, compacted white stone, explaining it's a form of earth magic that makes things solid. Rub. Fina takes the stone and realizes with excitement that it's chalk. She eagerly asks if she can draw on the ground, and Martina gives her permission, saying she can just erase it later. Fina excitedly throws a rock onto a drawn grid, shouting, "Hopscotch!" Martina watches in fascination as Fina explains the game, admitting she's never seen anything like it before. Sparkle. Intrigued, Martina asks if she can try, prompting Fina to think that her interest is expected from an earth spirit contractor. Toss. Martina throws her marker with perfect aim, leading Fina to protest that an adult is trying too hard, but Martina simply states that the world is ruthless. Boo. Fina pouts as a frog spirit appears above her, reflecting that Martina's competitive nature fits an earth spirit contractor. Martina smiles confidently as a determined Fina waits for her turn to play. A young boy wonders how to ask someone to be his partner, pondering how his father proposed to his mother. A man with red hair smiles, asking his son if there's a particular reason for the question. He explains that while he didn't ask for a dance partner, he did give the boy's mother flowers after a big fight. Ophinio continues his praise until the blonde boy tells him to stop, thinking he's making Fina sound like a fictional character. His father smiles, advising Ophinio to simply find a flower that resembles her. Ophinio's expression hardens with determination, now focused on his new goal. Elsewhere, a man with light purple hair and a blonde woman discuss His Majesty's upcoming birthday and the spirit contract ceremony. As they excitedly anticipate the prince's first ball, someone rushes past them, shouting an apology. Ophinio stops abruptly in a field of flowers, looking around in confusion as he calls out for His Majesty. Panicked, he frantically searches through the tall grass, thinking it can't be possible. His gloved hand parts the grass, revealing more white flowers as he notes their presence. Kneeling in defeat, Ophinio looks downcast as a narrator quips that he might not find her because she isn't a flower.